This girl named Yunmi is a person from the lower class, although she has a very wealthy best friend Seon. Yunmi cannot get any help from her. Not only that, she is always called to Seon's father-in-law's house to help. Like a servant, Yunmi is busy all day, cooking a full table of food. Before Seon rushes home, Seon does not leave Yunmi to eat at home, just saying thank you. Yunmi works at Seon's jewelry company, but she doesn't get any special treatment, just an ordinary salesperson. One day, a friend of Seon's came over. Their mutual friend had ended her life because her husband was cheating on her. Hearing this, Yunmi tactfully walked aside, but as she was at the door, she heard the two of them's acerbic conversation. Her friend reminded Seon to pay attention to the people around her. What's more unfortunate is that Yunmi found a boyfriend who was many years younger than her. She took care of her boyfriend's daily life for several years. Yunmi did this so that her boyfriend could pass the civil service exam. Fortunately, her boyfriend really passed this year. Unfortunately, when Yunmi came to inquire about the situation, her boyfriend pretended to have failed the exam again. But after Yunmi left, he started dancing again. Taehan invited his friends and said that they would get drunk tonight. After Yunmi finished work, she was worried that her boyfriend would think about it too much and run away early. So she wanted to comfort him, but she couldn't find Taehan. If Seon hadn't happened to pass by the bar, she wouldn't have known how long Yunmi had been lying to him. When Yunmi heard the news, she rushed over immediately. She wanted to confront her boyfriend and scold him in person. In the end, she could only help her boyfriend pay the bill and leave. That day Yunmi went to the home of a wealthy woman to deliver some jewelry, but the family dog kept barking at her. She was so scared that she fell to her knees. After delivering the jewelry, the wealthy lady took out another string of jewelry and said that the thread had broken and needed to be replaced. As she was leaving, Yunmi looked at the barking dog. She thought that she could just rush out, but this time she tripped over the step and fell to the ground. The dog also bit the bag containing the jewelry. During the struggle, the jewelry spilled all over the floor. When Yunmi took the jewelry back, she had left 3 behind, so she ran back in the middle of the night, holding a flashlight and kneeling on the ground to look for them. In the end, she spent the whole night looking for the 3 missing jewels. Yunmi delivered the items to Seon and left. Seon was worried about her going home alone so late at night, so she asked her husband to drive her back. On the way, Jae-ho noticed Yunmi's injured knee, so Jae-ho stopped the car and bought some emergency supplies to help her out. Seeing Yunmi shrink from the pain, Jae-ho also thoughtfully leaned forward and let out a shallow breath. Yunmi looked at him with a hint of ripples in her heart as he was so careful. The next day Seon said she wanted to hold a celebration banquet for Taehan, so the two of them went to the supermarket and bought a whole lot of things. When getting on the bus, Taehan accidentally almost tripped and spilled the fruit he had just bought all over the floor. Yunmi quickly picked it up. Taehan, however, ran off without looking back and sat down. When Yunmi came over, he even lost his temper with her, saying that if they had taken a taxi, they would not have been so embarrassed. Yunmi could only coax her boyfriend like a child. She also told her boyfriend that he could go to her house next week. The two of them had previously agreed to get engaged after passing the civil service exam. However, Taehan used the excuse that he had not yet officially started working as an excuse to get out of it. Yunmi didn't notice that her boyfriend's attitude towards her had completely turned impatient. At that time, she even took out her phone and took a photo of the two of them together, but she was humiliated by her boyfriend instead. At the celebration party, Yunmi was busy going around the huge villa by herself. Taehan just lay around playing games. Yunmi prepared all the ingredients in the kitchen by herself, but her love-struck brain didn't get any rewards. After preparing everything, she took out a box of balloons and asked Taehan to help decorate her best friend's villa. Unexpectedly, Taehan flipped the box over with one hand and didn't even look at it. Taehan said, "I'm not a kid anymore. Why would I like this kind of thing?" Facing her boyfriend's attitude, Yunmi was still not angry. Instead, she bent down and picked it up, saying that she really likes it. Even now, seeing balloons still makes her excited and makes her feel happy. But Taehan didn't hear a single word, so Yunmi happily blew up the balloons by herself, decorating the place like a wedding room. It wasn't long before Seon and Jae-ho arrived. They were both amazed at Yunmi's ability to get things done. Jae-ho reached out to congratulate Taehan, but Taehan pretended to be all smiles, saying that he had only used less than 1% of his effort. Jae-ho told him to be nice to Yunmi because she had done so much for him. Hearing this, Taehan's face instantly changed. At dinner, they raised their glasses together to celebrate Taehan. Seon and Jae-ho showed off their affection right in front of the two of them. Seeing this, Yunmi wanted to have a toast with Taehan. She turned her head to look, and Taehan had actually drunk it on his own. Yunmi's embarrassed expression was caught by Jae-ho's eyes, although Taehan began to dislike Yunmi. But when he saw her help Jae-ho, who was grilling the meat, roll up his sleeves. Taehan's face instantly fell again. The petty him mocked when Jae-ho praised him for finding a good job. Seeing that the atmosphere had reached an awkward point, Jae-ho put on some music and said he would dance for a while. But Taehan looked at the two of them and was unhappy again. Yoonmi was holding a bottle of red wine and was about to go out. Jae-ho, however, walked straight towards her. It turned out that this was all Yoonmi's imagination. She didn't know why such a thought suddenly popped into her head. Yoonmi nervously asked Jae-ho what was going on. The few of them didn't dance for long before it started to rain heavily, but Seon pulled Yoonmi back with one hand. It turned out that they had been classmates. Once, Seon was showing off her new makeup to her classmates in class, when the teachers suddenly burst in and confiscated all of it, while Yoonmi secretly stepped on a lipstick under her foot. Thinking that this would help her get close to the rich and escape her poor fate, Yoonmi not only took the lipstick but also gave it to Seon, who was punished with cleaning the toilets, and started cleaning with her. After school, it was raining heavily outside, and Yoonmi deliberately threw her umbrella into the trash can. Sure enough, Seon, who was passing by, noticed her getting wet. Seon quickly held up her umbrella and handed it over. However, Yoonmi said it was okay and that she liked getting wet. Just then, a passing car splashed the water on the side of the road. This is how the two became good friends. However, 20 years have passed, and Yoonmi, who became friends with the chaebol's daughter, has not seen any improvement in her life. After washing up, they took out a lie detector and played truth or dare. Unexpectedly, the first question was about sex. Seon was also relieved when she saw the green light come on. When Yoonmi's turn came, she asked the same question, but Yoonmi's answer of 1 month showed a red light. The green light only came on when she said 3 months. However, Taehan was not ashamed of this. He continued to ask if anyone there had been Yoonmi's first love. Yoonmi nodded, and Taehan knew that it definitely wasn't him. He fell silent for a moment. Taehan's dislike of Yoonmi's mouth was even more undisguised. He began to dislike Yoonmi's dress sense as tacky. Everyone else knew to wear stockings and high heels every day, but you keep wearing those worn-out flat shoes. Yoonmi explained that she felt uncomfortable wearing high heels, but Taehan started talking about clothes again. Look at how pretty the clothes she's wearing are. If you're going out with friends, you should dress up. Wearing tacky clothes will make your man lose face. After Taehan finished, he blamed Yoonmi for always bragging about taking care of him for the past 4 years, boasting about how she had taken such good care of him over the past 4 years. As Taehan spoke, he showed his jealousy. They were just born into good families and met rich parents, and they act like they've done something wrong. Yoonmi was too weak to say anything back. Seeing Taehan's angry face, she kept coaxing him. Yoonmi, who hadn't had sex for 3 months, wanted to have an epic battle, but she was kicked to the ground by Taehan. Yoonmi suppressed the flames in her heart, ran out alone and slowly walked to the edge of the pool. She stood by the pool and thought for a long time, unable to understand what was going on. When she had removed all her clothes, she didn't care about the cold night and jumped into the pool with a splash. On the other side, Jae-ho was also kicked out of bed for not letting Seon have enough. Depressed, he took a beer out for some fresh air. Just then he saw Yoonmi swimming. He watched the graceful slow figure for a long time. Yoonmi seemed to sense it, and turned her head to look, but she only saw Jae-ho's departing back. The next day when they went home, Yoonmi took the initiative to apologize to Taehan. She said that she had thought about it from his perspective all night. In yesterday's situation, he would be justified in being angry. In the future, she would constantly reflect on herself and not make similar mistakes. Hearing this, Taehan was speechless and turned away. The two of them didn't contact each other for a few days like this. That day, Yoonmi finally couldn't hold back any longer and went to find Taehan. She had prepared a whole table of food and was waiting for Taehan to come home from work. She even prepared a bottle of expensive red wine. Yoonmi said with a smile, "Every woman has a fantasy, waiting for their loved one to come home every day, drinking and eating together, discussing the trivial matters of the day." Then the man, in a romantic gesture, pushes the table away, pins his beloved woman down and kisses her. Unexpectedly, Taehan's face instantly turned dark, and said that he was tired after a long day at work. He had spent the whole day smiling at his seniors, and he didn't want to go home and have to put up with Yoonmi's romantic antics. Taehan then asked Yoonmi why she had time to come to his place tonight. Did she quit her part-time job because she started working at the restaurant? Seeing that Yoonmi was speechless, he lectured her again. People like us who have no parents to rely on must work hard to earn money. Yoonmi said she wanted to take a break for a while and find a part-time job in the evenings after she got married. Then she timidly asked Taehan if he had time to accompany her home to meet her parents this weekend and set a wedding date. Taehan impatiently said, "What's your rush? I'm not ready yet." After returning home, Yoonmi told her younger sister about her plan to get married. Unexpectedly, Her younger sister understood it better than she did. Her younger sister felt that Taehan was not the right person, and the man who kept saying he wanted to make money and save money secretly went to look at a car the next day. Taehan was also looking at a car when he received a phone call from his friends. Then he went to a blind date for his friend. After learning that the other party was the daughter of a chaebol, Taehan showed even more enthusiasm. Unaware, Yoonmi thought her boyfriend was entertaining guests. When she returned home, she picked the cheapest wedding and wrote down every expense she needed to use. Her sister, who saw it all, couldn't help but mock her. That guy will never really love you. Yoonmi had no idea that her sister was telling the truth. Taehan's attitude only got slightly better when he asked Yoonmi for money, but her sister's words seemed to have awakened Yoonmi. She rushed out into the yard, looked up at the sky, and pondered everything that had happened recently. The next day, when she passed by a bridal shop, Yoonmi once again put it all behind her. She stared blankly at the wedding dresses in the window, thinking that she could finally have her own wedding dress. Later, she even went to the bank to apply for a mortgage for newlyweds. However, when Yoonmi went to clean up in the evening, she found that the wedding brochure she had given to Taehan had been torn up and thrown in the trash. Yoonmi was so angry that she called him directly to question him. Taehan's expression changed when he saw the caller ID, and he hurriedly explained that his sister was just like that, nagging him like his mother every day. After arriving home, he was admiring the new car he had just bought when he saw Yoonmi walking down the stairs. Taehan immediately hid behind the car, but unexpectedly Yoonmi had already noticed him. Taehan said pompously that he bought the car for his workplace. He said that Yoonmi, who had never been to the workplace, would not understand. Afterwards, Yoonmi picked up the expensive leather shoes he had just bought. Yoonmi hadn't said anything yet, but he went off the deep end. Is there a law that says civil servants can't wear good leather shoes? What Yoonmi didn't understand was why he had to buy these expensive things just after starting work. Taehan went berserk for a moment, then sat down and pretended to be pitiful, saying that he couldn't make much money on his salary. But now that he has a salary, he doesn't want to live the life of a loser that people look down on. Taehan also said that he didn't have any fun at the villa party last time. He and the two of them were completely on different levels, and he always felt a sense of loss. He also said that every time Eunmi saw him, she either nagged about money or asked when they would get married. Seeing him in such a miserable state, Eunmi couldn't bear to. She said she understood how he felt and wanted to say something to comfort him. Unexpectedly, Taehan said with righteous indignation that this was the first gift he had ever given himself since he was born. It was bought for him for all the hardships he had suffered over the past 30 years. Eunmi said that although she could understand, as soon as you buy a luxury item, it's hard to stop. If you buy nice shoes, then you need to match them with clothes. Taehan became impatient when he heard these words. He was tired of this life, tired of Eunmi always controlling him. He hoped that the two of them could spend some time apart. After returning home, Eunmi tossed and turned, unable to sleep. The images of the villa party kept playing in her mind, as well as the thought of Jaeho's attentiveness when treating her wounds. She suddenly got up and made a bold decision. The next day, she dressed up like a chaebol and went to a high-end shoe store. On the other side, Jaeho was about to answer Seon's call, but Eunmi found him at this time. Jaeho just put the phone in his pocket. He immediately noticed that Eunmi was very different from before. Just then, Seon called Eunmi again, but Eunmi ignored it and asked Jaeho if he had time. The next day, the family of 5 sat down to dinner together. The father suddenly asked Eunmi for the fare and the taxi. Eunmi handed the money to her father as usual, but her father resented the fact that she had given him too little. Even her brother next to her tried to get some money from Eunmi. Her mother also blamed her daughter. In this family, there is no laughter from harmonious coexistence. There is only endless quarreling and nagging. Only when Eunmi hands over her living expenses every month does her mother calm down for a while. This also led to her younger sister having to wear revealing miniskirts to work at a gas station to earn money, to pay off her overspending credit card bills. Unexpectedly, her troublemaking brother discovered this and told her mother. Eunmi, who had also received the news, hurried back home. Her mother scolded her sister. The traditional and feudal mother thought that her sister had humiliated her again in this way. If the neighbors knew, how could she let her face them? Seeing her daughter still dare to argue back, her mother raised her hand and slapped her. Her father quickly stopped her mother and asked her daughter to apologize to her. However, her daughter said that she had done nothing wrong. In the end, Eunmi promised to help her sister find a new job and the matter was settled. That night, Eunmi found her sister and told her to bear with it and work hard in the future. She was worried that if she got married and moved out, her sister would be left alone at home. Her sister knew that Eunmi was trying to escape from home, but she could not marry that unreliable guy. That would only send Eunmi into an even worse hell. Her sister's words made Eunmi fall into deep thought again. In this family, there was an unwritten rule. Only after getting married could one move out and live on one's own. And judging from their parents' character, even after getting married, it would be difficult to sever ties with them. Whenever she felt sad, Yunmi would imagine her parents as poor people forced by life's circumstances, and that made her feel better. The next day Yunmi asked Seon's brother to help her find a job for her sister. At first Neil refused, but seeing Yunmi sitting there in silence, he immediately changed his mind and said that he could let her sister work as an accountant, provided that Yunmi didn't tell anyone about last year's incident, and that no one knew about today's private meeting. It seems that there is also some kind of secret between the two, so Yunmi just handed her sister over to Neil. When her sister saw this man, she immediately smiled with contempt. This was the same man who forgot to pay for the gas last time. The next day Neil came to pick up her sister to go to work. As soon as her sister got in the car, she started making a list of rules with Neil. The salary must be paid on time. Overtime pay must be given in full. If there is any physical harassment, or even personal attacks and some unreasonable demands, she would definitely report him to the labor bureau. As soon as her sister finished speaking, Neil reached over and put his hand on her shoulder. It turned out that Neil just wanted to protect his sister from getting hurt, but his hand happened to touch her in a place it shouldn't. This made his sister's impression of Neil even worse. But when they got to work, his sister worked diligently. When she printed something, she realized she was out of paper. When she went out, she told Neil that the stationery store sold the kind of paper she needed. Then she put on her headphones and started talking on the phone. Unexpectedly, the sister with the headphones on couldn't hear Neil no matter how loudly he shouted. At the critical moment, Neil leapt over and hugged his sister. The sister, who was about to lose her temper, glanced at the metal bucket rolling on the side. A strange feeling welled up in her heart. She realized that this was how it felt to be saved at the risk of one's life. For the first time, she was treasured so much, and a ripple of emotion welled up in her heart. On the other side, her best friend was scolding Yunmi in front of Seon, but Seon did not defend her. In order to win the favor of this big client, Seon continued to flatter her. The chaebol wife was instantly amused and laughed heartily. She did not notice Yunmi's natural expression at all. Then the chaebol wife took out a diamond ring and said she wanted it cleaned. Yunmi, who could only be her best friend's little follower outside, immediately took it over. Seon seemed to be uneasy and told her to be careful. Yunmi could only smile humbly and agree. The chaebol lady seemed to have a particularly strong prejudice against Yunmi and kept on criticizing her. She didn't care at all. Yunmi just listened on the side. After the two of them went back, Seon tried to comfort her, but she was speaking from a businessman's perspective, and said that the rich woman had ordered 300 million won worth of jewelry from her, and try to swallow her anger when she sees her in the future. Hearing her best friend's words, Yunmi's expression became unnatural. However, Seon did not notice the abnormality and continued talking about it. But Yunmi still helped Seon's mother-in-law at her house without complaint. Seon, who had arrived late, was called into the room by her mother-in-law as soon as she entered the door. The mother-in-law scolded Seon for being busy all day and not seeing her, not only leaving the child in the care of others but also dressing up every day, with her hands full of nail art that were clearly not used for housework. In fact, the mother-in-law had just returned from plastic surgery at the hospital, and she was also bossy at home and did nothing. What outsiders saw as a wealthy family could not even afford to hire a nanny. The mother-in-law used Yunmi every day and also demanded that Seon stay at home and take care of her husband and children. Seon has always endured it quietly, but with her high-handed attitude, she can't help but retort occasionally, which gives her mother-in-law an excuse to attack. Seon is angry and helpless. Don't keep bringing up the fact that I married you for your wealth. It turns out that Seon's family fell on hard times when her father's business went bankrupt and he racked up huge debts. Even her mother's heart surgery was paid for by her husband, saving her a huge sum of money. And because of the sudden inequality in wealth, her mother-in-law said she married her for her wealth. When she returned home, Seon took out all her anger on her husband. She blamed him for never helping out, which caused her mother to say that she had married for money, and her father wanted a son every time they met. This was their life. Why should they interfere? Seon, who had once been the daughter of a chaebol, had already toned down her arrogant personality a lot. Seon immediately told her husband that she didn't want to see her in-laws again for a while. She told her husband to pick up their daughter by himself in the future. The mother-in-law racked her brains all night, feeling that she had lost the argument the day before. The next day, she barged directly into Seon's home. What met her eyes was a mess in the living room. Leftovers were everywhere on the dining table, and there wasn't much usable food in the refrigerator. The mother-in-law instantly thought of what she would say to her daughter-in-law later. Then she barged into the bedroom and recklessly rummaged through Seon's closet. She roughly separated her daughter-in-law's clothes from her son's. When Seon returned, she was shocked to find her mother-in-law waiting at home. Seon scolded her mother-in-law for not calling first to let her know she was coming. Her mother-in-law, however, didn't think it was necessary to call and make an appointment, as this was her son's home. Her mother-in-law then gave Seon a scolding, but Seon just casually replied, We'll figure it out ourselves. This made her mother-in-law forget the carefully prepared lines she had prepared, so she had to find another excuse and asked Cian why she had changed the combination. Could it be that she was the reason for the change? But Cian didn't want to waste any more time with her, and was afraid that the anger she had been holding back for the past 2 days would explode. She turned around and went into her room to lie down, but then her mother-in-law called her son. Listening to her incessant complaints on the phone, Cian not only felt incredibly tired, but also wanted to get back at her mother-in-law. The next day Yunmi came to visit Cian's hospitalized mother instead of Cian, but she didn't expect to be mocked as soon as they met. She first asked Yunmi if she had bought the clothes herself, and after getting a positive reply, she felt that this was as it should be. Cian's mother's contemptuous gaze was simply undisguised. What's more, she even went so far as to say that her daughter Cian would never buy such clothes that were obvious cheap imitations. After that, she even put her hands on her chest in a mocking and disdainful expression, saying that even if she wore Cian's clothes, they would not suit her. Yunmi could only smile and say that she could not compare with Cian, but Cian's mother still wouldn't let it go, and said that she had looked old since high school. However, Yunmi still looked weak, and instead praised Cian's mother for still looking so young. But unexpectedly, Cian's mother just turned her head away, as if Yunmi was not worthy of praising her. Just then, Jae-ho also rushed over. Cian's mother immediately got up and changed her expression. Then she looked full of confusion as to why they had come together, where her daughter Cian had gone. Unexpectedly, when she learned that her daughter was busy, Cian's mother instead glared viciously at Yunmi, telling her not to bother Jae-ho again. Other people seeing this would mistake them for husband and wife, and told them to leave separately later. Just tell Yunmi to take the bus back. Although Jae-ho helped explain and smooth things over, Cian's mother still looked at Yunmi like she wanted to eat her. Yunmi's expression stiffened. After the two of them came out, they contacted Cian and said they would have dinner together that night. When Cian arrived, she hugged Yunmi and cooed at her. Only she would treat her own mother like her own mother. But when she saw Yunmi's gorgeous outfit, Cian felt guilty again. She thought Yunmi was supposed to go on a date with Taehan today, but she had spent the whole day bossing her around. Cian also praised her for her outfit today, saying it looked absolutely stunning. Jae-ho immediately explained that they had met at the clinic and gone to the hospital together. It turned out that Yunmi had found Jae-ho before going to visit Cian's mother. Yunmi wanted him to help her see what parts of her face could be fixed with plastic surgery. The moment Jae-ho touched her cheek, Yunmi's mind flashed back to the dream of beauty that wasn't hers. Jae-ho couldn't help but freeze when he saw her burning gaze. He thought about the scene where he ran into Yunmi naked in the pool, while the two of them were making plans. Cian called and said that her mother had fainted after arguing with someone at the hospital. She then called Yunmi to go with Jae-ho. What Cian didn't know was that the two of them were together at that time. At the dinner table, Jae-ho said that Yunmi had gone to the clinic to meet him, completely hiding the fact that the two had met and were going to get plastic surgery. Hearing this, Cian didn't think much of it, but the two guilty people seemed a little unnatural. After dinner, Yunmi went to see Taehan again. Taehan had been talking and laughing on the phone with someone else a second ago, but immediately pulled a long face when he saw Yunmi, as if they were enemies, asking her why she was there. But Yunmi still had a smile on her face as she asked him how his day had been. Taehan, however, didn't want to deal with her at all and simply turned his head away. Seeing that Taehan didn't seem to have noticed that she had changed her appearance today, Yunmi directly asked him about it. Taehan looked her up and down, but then said that she was ugly as hell. The embarrassed Yunmi had to change the subject and asked Taehan to take her for a ride in his new car, but Taehan refused, saying that he was tired from work. He asked Yunmi to sit in the passenger seat just to get a feel for the car. Even though his attitude was so bad, Yunmi didn't feel it at all. She sat up there with a smile on her face. Not only that, he praised Taehan's great taste. His years of saving money hadn't been in vain. But just then, Yunmi found a lipstick by the shoe store. As soon as she picked it up, Taehan snatched it away from her. Taehan said he had just dropped a female colleague home. She must have left it in the car. It was settled. The next day Yunmi made a big nourishing soup and waited for Taehan to come back and drink it. But Taehan sent a message again saying that he had to work overtime tonight, so Yunmi went home first. But what she didn't expect was that her younger sister was having dinner with a friend when she saw Taehan get into a car with a woman. So she immediately ran home and told her sister about it. Yunmi heard this and hurried over. She took a deep breath and opened the door. Luckily, she didn't see the disgusting scene. Just as Yunmi was going downstairs, Taehan returned with her so-called colleague. Although Taehan's expression changed dramatically, he shamelessly said that this was his sister. The woman, who didn't know the truth, even smiled and said hello. After seeing Yunmi's gloomy face, Taehan even explained that his sister had been in a bad mood recently. However, before the woman left, she didn't forget to tell Taehan, "Your sister is really scary." After the woman left, Taehan also realized that he had really messed up this time. This was also the first time he had smiled at Yunmi and said, I'm working late today. My colleagues said they want to find a cheaper place to have a drink. But Yunmi just glared at him and turned around and went upstairs. Although Taehan was full of anger, he still wanted to explain. Unexpectedly, as he was talking, he began to blame Yunmi. Yunmi finally turned around and asked who the woman was. Taehan's eyes flickered as he explained some nonsense. Yunmi just stared at him coldly without saying a word. Then she reached out her hand. Taehan took out his phone. Taehan said, 4 years ago, we agreed not to look at each other's phones. Yunmi finally hardened up for once and stared hard at the man in front of her. Taehan had no choice but to take out his phone, but he used this as a threat to Yunmi. After looking at it, the two would be over. But Yunmi was about to reach out to take it when she was avoided. Taehan also repeated the words that it would really be over. I don't know if he wanted to threaten her with this or was afraid of losing a sister who would pay for him. Seeing Yunmi's firm attitude, he could only helplessly hand over his phone. When Yunmi asked him to unlock the phone, unexpectedly, Taehan became even more angry and picked up the phone and threw it on the floor. Seeing his actions, Yunmi already guessed what was going on. Taehan continued to yell angrily, threatening Yunmi that if she ever did that again, he would not be polite. Yunmi rushed out, her eyes filled with tears. Without looking back, she let the shameless man yell and scream at home. Yunmi walked alone and despondently down the street. Her mother's words suddenly came to her mind. You're almost 40 years old. What's the point of not getting married if you're just a friend's lackey? She had compromised once again. As soon as it got light, Yunmi ran to the door of a store and joined the long queue. Afterwards, she called out to Taehan. She handed him the latest model of mobile phone and apologized, saying that she had misunderstood everything. You would never do such a thing. However, Taehan's mind was completely focused on the new phone model. He just mumbled a few words in response, perhaps because he was happy. Taehan even took the initiative this time to say that he would go to her house to meet her parents at the weekend. After returning home, Yunmi shared the good news with her family. She also took out several 100,000 won and asked her mother to buy groceries. Seeing the stack of money, her mother's back didn't ache anymore. Her whole body was radiant. However, Yunmi specifically told her mother to buy local beef, because the taste of imported beef is worlds apart from local beef. But when she went to the store and asked about the price, local beef was several times more expensive than imported beef, and her mother knew which one to buy. Even a fool would know. On the other side, Yunmi was cleaning when her younger sister once again persuaded her not to marry that man. Yunmi quickly led Taehan back in. Taehan, who was good for nothing, had a disgusted look on his face as soon as he entered the door. The door he closed casually fell directly after entering the house. He hadn't taken 2 steps when the floorboards creaked. During dinner, Yunmi's father said he would show Taehan a photo of Yunmi when she was little, but when he got up, the table overturned. Although this scene seemed to be heaven's punishment of Taehan, or heaven's way of stopping this marriage, but Yunmi still followed Taehan with a worried face, apologizing non-stop. But Taehan left without looking back. Seeing his departing back, Yunmi didn't know what to do. Just then, the red balloon in the hand of a little girl who was passing by slipped out of her hand and floated away. Yunmi stared at the balloon and stood still for a long time. That day, Seon was discussing a business collaboration with a client when her mother-in-law strutted into the office and slammed the door behind her. Seon pretended not to see and continued introducing the product to the client. Seeing her daughter-in-law completely ignore her, her mother-in-law slammed the book onto the table and made all sorts of strange noises. Seon immediately sent a message to Jaeho for help, asking him to pick up her mother-in-law, but it was already too late. The mother-in-law was first talking loudly on the phone and deliberately making shrill laughter sounds. Unexpectedly, as she laughed, she suddenly choked. Seon wanted to go over and help, but was stopped by a hand gesture from the mother-in-law. She had no choice but to go back and keep apologizing to the customer. But unexpectedly, there was another problem with the mother-in-law. Not only did she drop the cup on the ground, she also kept coughing violently. The customer couldn't stand the noise anymore and left, saying he would watch it next time, and then pushed open the door and walked away. However, after the mother-in-law saw the two of them go out, she revealed a smug smile. It turned out that she had done all this deliberately. Poor Seon thus lost a big customer who could have set down a few 100 million won at a time, and she took her anger out on Jaeho. Unexpectedly, Jaeho even took his mother back home. Seon saw the disgusting shoes as soon as she entered the door. She kicked them away and walked in. But the even more miserable Jaeho also told her mother that she was going to stay at home tonight. Although Seon put on a brave face and greeted her mother-in-law, she still couldn't avoid being scolded. Her mother-in-law had obviously eaten every last bit of pig's trotters that Jaeho had bought, and yet she still accused Seon of not cooking at home. She and her son could only eat such simple meals. Luckily, Jaeho came out in time to smooth things over and asked her to go to her room and rest. Her mother-in-law glared at her the whole way to her room, but as soon as Seon closed the door, she picked up the pig's feet and started nibbling on them. Seon realized that something was wrong. Sure enough, Her clothes were pushed to the side in the closet by her mother-in-law. When she opened the drawer, her underwear and her husband's were clearly separated. The next morning, her mother-in-law was surprised to see that her son was making breakfast. Jae-ho hurriedly explained that Seon worked late every day and that he had inherited his father's love of cooking. But his mother-in-law thinks that cooking is something women should do, and that men should just sit back and enjoy it. She didn't raise him to be a good doctor just so he could cook at home every day. As she said this, she stormed into Seon's room to give her a piece of her mind. But Seon was talking to a client in Italian and gave her a hand signal to be quiet. This left his mother-in-law stunned. When his mother came out, she complained to Jae-ho again. "What's the point of having a daughter-in-law like this?" She said a bunch of things that no one understood. All she knows how to do is make weird things every day. What's most infuriating is that she makes her son cook and spends all the money she earns on her mother. When she saw Seon come out, Jae-ho used his trump card to shut his mother up, saying that if she got angry, she would get 2 more wrinkles. But when the mother-in-law saw Seon, her expression changed. Jae-ho, who loves Seon, quickly found an excuse for her to change her clothes and get ready for the meeting. Just as they were about to leave, Jae-ho habitually took out the trash to prepare to dump it. The old woman instantly jumped up from the sofa. She never expected that her son was living such a nomadic life. She said she was going to take the trash from Jae-ho's hands. No matter what, Seon had to take out the trash today. Just as the two were struggling, the trash bag broke. Seon was just about to go out when she was scolded by her mother-in-law. At this point, she finally could not stand it anymore and said that anyone can take out the trash. "This is our home and you are just a guest. It is not right for you to interfere in our lives so much." The mother-in-law could not believe that Seon dared to speak to her like this. She immediately said that she wanted her son to divorce Seon in order to make Seon happy. Jae-ho also tried his best. He bought a bouquet of flowers and snacks that Seon liked the most. Hearing Jae-ho's apologetic words, Seon couldn't hold back her tears. She vented all the grievances she had suffered recently to Jae-ho. But just as they were hugging, Yoonmi intruded in an inappropriate manner. Seon told her to stay and said everything she had not finished saying just now. The more she talked, the more aggrieved she became. So she threw the flowers on the ground and rushed out. After the two of them chased after her, they only saw Seon's driving away in the distance. That night, Seon called Yoonmi out for a drink and told her about the hardships she had endured over the years, in order to repay the debt her late father had left behind. Seon had worked like a horse for the past few years, doing all the hard work, but she never imagined that her repeated forbearance would allow her mother-in-law to take advantage of her. Jae-ho, who had been waiting anxiously for Seon to return home, sent a message to Yoonmi asking if the two of them were together, but Yoonmi didn't reply after taking a glance at the message. After 3 rounds of drinks, Seon ran to the middle of the room and jumped up. Unexpectedly, Jae-ho suddenly arrived. It turned out that Seon had called Jae-ho herself, but when she saw Jae-ho, she said, "I hate you." After helping Seon into the car, Yoonmi explained that she had no time to check her phone because she was too busy fending off the male customers in the store for Seon. Seeing Jae-ho drive away, a lonely sense of loss welled up in Yoonmi's heart. That day, after Taehan returned from Yoonmi's house, he had been suffering from diarrhea. Eventually, he broke his arm in the bathroom. Taehan blamed Yoonmi for all of this and sent a text saying that they were over. Yoonmi immediately went over there, but the password had been changed. No one answered the phone when she called, and she didn't get a reply to her message, so she just sat dumbfounded at the door and waited. However, Taehan still didn't come back overnight. Yoonmi found out that he was in the hospital and rushed over. Taehan then vented about what had happened to him over the past 2 days. Yoonmi explained that none of her family members had been hurt. Taehan immediately said, "Of course your family is fine. You're used to eating that kind of thing." It was obvious that the beef was locally produced. Hearing this, Yoonmi started apologizing again. She took Taehan's hand and said, "Let's go somewhere and talk about this." But he just shook her off. Taehan started talking about the family conditions of the two. His family was not very wealthy, but they could be considered a well-off family. "But when I went to your house last time, not only was the front door broken, but 5 people had to squeeze into that tiny, broken house. The most important thing is that you still don't have a stable job and have been relying on odd jobs to make a living." The ridiculous thing is that Taehan completely ignored the fact that Yoonmi had supported and provided for him for 4 years. If it weren't for Yoonmi's help, would he have had the opportunity to take the civil service exam? However, no matter how Yoonmi tried to persuade Taehan, he just walked away without looking back. Yoonmi ran home with tears in her eyes. She opened the refrigerator and sniffed the food inside. She asked her mother where the food had gone that had cost hundreds of thousands of won, but her mother told her not to worry so much and that the food was enough to fill her stomach. Yoonmi finally exploded. Usually, it was fine for the family to eat like this, but that day was Taehan's first day as a guest in the house. She never imagined that her own mother would fail her at such a critical moment. Yoonmi was fed up with such a money-oriented family, and this was one of the reasons why she wanted to get married as soon as possible. Despite this, Her mother still felt that she had done nothing wrong. After hearing the news, her younger sister came to the hospital to apologize to Taehan, but she didn't expect to see such a scene. She waited outside the house for a long time. Yunmi told her what she had seen. In her younger sister's mind, her older sister had been very smart and clever since childhood. Not only did she rank among the best in her studies, her appearance was also not inferior to any woman. She has no idea what her sister is thinking. She knows everything, but she can turn a blind eye. But why does she have to keep on nagging? Yunmi can't hold back any longer when she hears her sister's words. She has grown up surrounded by her mother's negativity, being told that she can't do this or that. In the end, she has become just like her mother. Now, at the age of 37, she is still not married. If she doesn't hurry up and get married, she will truly become a failure in life. Just as her mother said, she feels that she has nothing to lose now, so she might as well get married first. Even if she gets divorced in the end, at least she can prove that she was once needed. Her younger sister wants to wake her up, but Yunmi still thinks that Taehan will eventually come back to her. After all, Taehan is younger than herself and just doesn't understand yet. Her younger sister says that the man has no intention of a long-term relationship. He just sees you as a tool. Despite her sister's blunt words, Yunmi continued to do as she pleased. The next day, she even went to Taehan with a diamond ring. Taehan, however, told her to face reality. Just dump me in this scum. Yunmi, however, said that she had invested 4 years of her youth and sweat. She could not let go of it. Taehan's head instantly swelled when he heard this. He asked her how much she wanted before she would let go of him. Yunmi, however, obstinately said, "I'll pay you back slowly after we get married." At this moment, Taehan could no longer hold back and exploded. "For the past 4 years, you have constantly watched over me, forcing me to study every day, not letting me go out or rest. I feel like I'm living in hell every day. I don't want to live like that anymore." Yunmi, however, did this because I like you. Hearing Taehan's expression change, Yunmi told her to listen to the voice inside her heart. It is precisely because you have a guilty conscience that you were afraid to play the lie detector at the party that day. During their argument, Yunmi slapped Taehan directly in the face. Seon woke up and found an envelope on the bedside table. Inside was a check for 100 million won with an apology note attached. Seon, who had been in a cold war, instantly broke into a smile, thinking about Jaeho waiting up for her these past few days and even asking his sister to intercede for him. Seon's resentment disappeared without a trace. However, what Seon never expected was that she called Yunmi over the phone. She even gave Yunmi the 10 million won. After that, she took out the pair of rings she had designed herself and said they were for Yunmi's wedding as a lucky charm. That night, as soon as Jaeho returned home, he immediately put his arm around Seon's shoulders and coaxed her. After seeing the slight upturn of the corner of her mouth, he also knew that most of her resentment had disappeared. Seon also did not hide the fact that she had given the money to Yunmi, which made Jaeho feel so sad. The two also made up during the toasting. On the other side, Yunmi took the ring Seon gave her and went to Taehan to ask for a reunion. But in the end, they had a quarrel and parted. The next day, Taehan even found Seon and told her about their breakup, and asked her to persuade Yunmi to leave him alone. Seon looked surprised. The two had clearly said they were getting married just 2 days ago, so why had they suddenly broken up? Taehan took the time to explain to her that Yunmi had been driving him crazy lately. Perhaps at this point Taehan didn't realize that his attitude towards any woman would be 100 times better than his attitude towards Yunmi. Although Seon tried her best to dissuade him and say kind words, Taehan looked resolute, saying that no matter what, the two of them could never go back to the way things were. Just as he was about to leave, he wanted to say something to Seon, but the words stuck in his throat. Taehan felt that it was better for Seon not to know. After returning home, Seon hesitated for a long time before calling Yunmi to ask what she was doing. However, Yunmi stubbornly said that she was checking on the wedding arrangements. Hearing this, Seon didn't know whether to tell Taehan that he had come to see her. She then told her husband about this and asked him to think of a way to persuade him. The next day, Jaeho went to see him, but Taehan looked unhappy when he saw this man. He also thought that Jaeho had been sent by Yunmi to plead for him. Taehan mocked Jaeho for pretending to be a gentleman while secretly having affairs. "You can come back when you've sorted out your own relationships." Jaeho went back with a puzzled look on his face to report the situation to Seon. "But the other person told me to sort out my relationships before coming back." Seon thought about the way Taehan had hesitated that day, but the two of them couldn't figure out what was going on. They could only try to persuade Yunmi to give up. When Yunmi arrived, Seon directly confessed that Taehan had come to see him, and even arranged a drinking session for her, and they would get drunk together after Jaeho drove the car over. But Yunmi looked panicked when she heard this and said she wanted to be alone for a while. On the other side, her younger sister found Taehan's social media account and posted photos of women pregnant with his child. She immediately went looking for him. Then she grabbed Taehan's shirt and kicked him into the trash. After giving him a good scolding, her younger sister left in style. Taehan, who bullies the weak but fears the strong, waited for her at Yoonmi's doorstep. He felt that Jaeho and his sister had been sent by Yoonmi to teach him a lesson. It was just a breakup. So why did it have to turn out like this? But Taehan felt that it was for the best. Today, he had been treated like this, so it was even. But after taking a few steps, he turned back. He said he wanted to give Yoonmi a final piece of advice. Don't hang around them anymore. No matter how hard you try, you can't get close to them. You're only fit to be a follower in this life. The next day, Seon's mother-in-law found Yoonmi and tried to find out some secrets about her daughter-in-law. She wanted to make Yoonmi lose face. The mother-in-law even said that it would be great to have a daughter-in-law like Yoonmi. She wanted to drive a wedge between the two of them, so that she could pull Yoonmi onto her side and help her deal with her daughter-in-law. Yoonmi's ambiguous response made the mother-in-law's dislike of her daughter-in-law even more obvious. She kept asking whether her daughter-in-law had led an immoral life while studying abroad. Yoonmi's silence made the mother-in-law even more certain of her suspicions. Then the mother-in-law further provoked a rift between Yoonmi and Seon. She told Yoonmi not to tell anyone about this secret meeting. Meanwhile, Seon's mother called her daughter. She told Seon that she often saw her son-in-law and Yoonmi going out together. And if you didn't know any better, you'd think they were a couple. Seon hurriedly explained that it was because she had asked Yoonmi for help, but her mother still reminded Seon to be careful of her best friend. Seon, however, thought her mother's worries were unnecessary. She had complete trust in her husband and best friend. The whole world had discovered Yoonmi's unusual behavior. Only Seon still kept believing in her. After getting married, she didn't even bother to set a password for her own home. She just let Yoonmi come and go as she pleased. After hearing about Taehan's situation, Yoonmi's family rushed to where he worked in a rage. They just started punching and kicking Taehan to take out their anger on him. Seeing this, Yoonmi's headache instantly worsened. The fact that she had been abandoned had completely spread. After his family was dragged away, Taehan said he was glad he hadn't married her. He questioned Yoonmi why she kept pestering him. Taehan even cursed at Yoonmi's family. Yoonmi was so angry that she punched him directly. Afterwards, she returned the ring and 10 million won that Seon gave her last time. Seon suggested having dinner with Jaeho. These days, the two of them are very worried about Yoonmi's state. But Yoonmi just wanted to be alone right now, so she rejected Seon's invitation and said she would call if she needed anything. But Seon was obviously worried, so she dragged her to a shoe store and told Yoonmi to go wild and spend as much as she wanted, as she would pay for it all. She wanted to turn Yoonmi into the kind of woman that Taehan would find too good for him. After some fruitless arguing, Yoonmi picked out a pair of sky-high shoes that she had never tried before, and then she matched it with a red skirt. Seon couldn't help but praise her, saying that she looked really pretty. Then she gave Yoonmi a limited edition bag. Such temperament deserves an expensive bag. Yoonmi, dressed in this way, is like the chaebol himself. She couldn't believe that she could be so beautiful. It's just a breakup, but it made Seon spend so much. Yoonmi said, "If I get divorced, won't you have to give me a car?" However, in the evening, the scumbag even messaged Yoonmi to invite her to dinner at the usual place. So Yoonmi put on a beautiful makeup and wore the full-body suit Seon gave her during the day to go on the date. Sure enough, Taehan was stunned when he first saw her. Afterwards, he even showed an unparalleled passion. Then Taehan said his purpose. It turned out that he wanted Yoonmi to go find that woman, because the woman knows about him and Yoonmi and has never wanted to get married. But the other person already has a child in her belly. Taehan feels that if he just lets it go, he would not be a man. So he hopes that Yoonmi can explain the situation to the woman. For all these years, it has been your wishful thinking. I have not promised anything. At this point, Yoonmi finally woke up. She should not have met this man with any hope. Seeing Yoonmi in this state, Taehan sneered. "I don't know why you still have hope until now. Your family beat me up, and I'm lucky I didn't call the police." At this time, Yoonmi didn't want to hear him explain anything. She questioned what Taehan had said when he went to see Seon and Jaeho. Taehan didn't pretend and revealed his true face. He even mocked Yoonmi's appearance. "You must have borrowed this outfit from Seon again. Even if you dress exactly like Seon, you can never be her. You'll just spend your life following someone else around like a dog. With your looks and age, how could you possibly have the nerve to marry me? You're almost 40. And it's doubtful you can even have kids." Yoonmi poured a glass of water directly in his face and left. After leaving, Yoonmi ran like crazy along the riverbank until she lost her shoe without noticing. She hated herself for not knowing why she had picked such a man. But as she cried, Yoonmi suddenly stood up. Her weak eyes had become determined. "It's hot." She decided not to hold back anymore. That day, Yoonmi came to Taehan's wedding. She took a big gift and said she was Taehan's ex-girlfriend of 4 years. Not only that, Yoonmi also told everyone that she had supported him financially and helped him get a civil servant position. Her words angered the two elderly people. When they opened the box, they found a photo of Taehan and Yoonmi together. Taehan suddenly became the target of everyone's scorn. First, he was slapped by his father-in-law. Then his future mother-in-law pulled his hair. Taehan finally broke free and grabbed Yoonmi to vent his anger, but he was shocked by Yoonmi's piercing gaze. Yoonmi told him not to be incompetent and furious here. "What I did was just repaying you." An exasperated Taehan compared her to Seon again. Rich and poor can really show the hierarchy of people. Seon is not only broad-minded but also gave him a pair of matching rings as a wedding gift. Taehan saw the bride rushing out and tried to escape, but was stopped by Yoonmi's uncle. In the blink of an eye, Taehan's head was hit by a high heel. Yoonmi had originally planned to let this matter go and break up with him. She began to live for herself. She worked part-time at various places every day and spent her breaks reading in the library. She wanted to try to get her teaching qualifications again, but she never expected Taehan to go and deliver the invitation to Seon. And even worse, try to drive a wedge between the two of them. And all of this happened to be seen by Yoonmi, who had gone to see Seon. So she decided to get her revenge on this man, and also use this as a way to say goodbye to the past. Seon returned home in the evening, and before Jaeho went to sleep, he suddenly asked her a question. "When you studied in Italy, weren't you particularly popular? You were always surrounded by a group of men." Seon calmly said that it was normal for her to be so charming. Seeing that her husband seemed to have some doubts, Seon gave him an explanation. At that time, her father's company was in urgent need of help. She studied so hard that she didn't have time to look at any men. She asked Jaeho why he suddenly became curious about this. However, Jaeho said that he just asked casually, and then changed the subject to Yoonmi. He told Seon to take good care of her during this time. After dating for 4 years, breaking up will definitely be particularly difficult. Seon sensed something from Jaeho's attitude today. The next day, she went to find her mother. If Jaeho comes to see her, just say you don't know no matter what he asks. Don't say the wrong thing when you're having a good time. In the evening, she went to her mother-in-law's house to pick up her daughter, but she didn't expect her mother-in-law to first look at her strangely, and then say that she had had many men. Seon's face changed when she heard this, but her mother-in-law still wouldn't let it go, saying that she was more than just in love, and even had a boyfriend she had lived with for 2 years. But Seon said she had never had anything like that. But her mother-in-law said Yoonmi had told her all that. Could it be that she had lied to her? Hearing this, Seon panicked. After returning to the office, she paced back and forth. It was as if she had some kind of secret. Thinking about her husband, she asked her mother-in-law together, and knew that things were definitely not that simple. The next day she called Yoonmi over. "Yoonmi said your mother-in-law asked some really weird questions, and I said I didn't know to all of them. I was going to tell her about this, but I was afraid of any misunderstandings, so I kept it to myself." It seems that a slight grudge had arisen in Seon's heart. If there is a similar situation next time, Yoonmi must definitely inform her. After some hesitation, Seon still asked about the thing she was most worried about. "You haven't said anything about that, have you?" After Yoonmi gave a positive reply, Seon's face eased. The next day Yoonmi went to work as usual. Seon, however, dragged Yoonmi along, saying she wanted to introduce her to a man, but unable to resist her coquetry. Yoonmi took the phone and looked it over. The man had a handsome appearance and was 4 years older than Yoonmi. She would no longer have to suffer. What's more, he was a partner of Seon's, although the company he ran only had 30 or so employees. But the other party has a few hundred square meters of apartments in the city center. However, Seon is a little worried that Yoonmi may not like the other party because he is older. Yoonmi immediately said that she has long been disgusted with the feeling of being an older sister. Seon never would have thought that it was because of her introduction of Yoonmi to this person that the two gradually broke up. The man was even more enthusiastic than Yoonmi had imagined. Yoonmi just wanted to reply to his question, but the next reply came. The two also quickly made an appointment to have dinner together on the weekend. On the day of the appointment, Yoonmi first found Seon and reported on the progress of the two in general. Hearing this, Seon was also relieved. She said she had finally completed the task that Jaeho had given her. Seon had just returned home when she received a phone call. After listening, she was shocked and couldn't believe it. On the other side, Yoonmi also arrived at the agreed restaurant, but just as she was about to push the door in, she received a message from the man. The man said that 10 years ago, he had been divorced. Yoonmi's face changed instantly after reading the message. She sent a message asking Seon if she knew about it. After learning that the other party knew, Yoonmi's face turned pale with fear. She turned her head directly and went home. She never imagined that Seon would introduce such a man to her. It turned out that the phone call Seon had just received was from the man, and the man had hidden it well. Seon had known him for many years and had no knowledge of this matter. It was because of this decision that the two of them could never return to their old intimacy. Yoonmi also recalled an incident from 5 years ago, when Seon introduced her friend Jaeho. Yoonmi finally understood that Seon had always looked down on her, and would never introduce her to a good man. Now she was telling her to accept a divorced man with a child. I guess in Seon's heart, She only deserves to marry a man with these conditions. But Yunmi's character is to hold everything in. She never thought about confronting Seon. Early the next morning, she went to the library to study. She finally understood that fate and money are only in her own hands. But at that moment, Seon called and wanted her to help deliver a string of jewelry to a client's home. Something came up at the office and she couldn't leave. After hanging up the phone, Yunmi thought about asking her father to take her there. Just as she was about to dial the phone, she stopped. After pondering for a while, Yunmi called Seon back and said that the familiar driver would not have time this time. Then she went to a cosmetics store and started to apply makeup on herself. Sure enough, as Yunmi expected, Seon called a little while later and said that Jae-ho had been sent as the driver. After hanging up the phone, Yunmi tilted her head and smiled slightly. Then she picked up a bottle of Chanel perfume on the table. After everything was ready, she blew up a red balloon by the roadside and made a wish of some kind. Yunmi got into the car and started chatting with Jae-ho. Jae-ho was curious why she had blown up a balloon and then let it go. Yunmi said that whenever she felt sad, she would blow up a balloon and let it go. At the same time, she might make a new wish. The two of them smiled at each other. And then Yunmi suddenly said something strange, but Jae-ho pretended not to hear and changed the subject. He said that the place they were going to this time was a bit far away, and they wouldn't be back until late. But Yunmi went to great lengths to let Jae-ho be the driver. How could she let this opportunity go so easily? On the way back, Jae-ho apologized to Yunmi for Seon, and said that the man he introduced last time was Seon, who didn't know the situation clearly. He also said that Yunmi's ex-boyfriend went to Seon to deliver the invitation that day, and first wanted Seon to give a pair of rings as a gift, and then said that he would pay for them. It so happened that the pair of rings were custom-made by the child of a chaebol but not wanted, so they were given to Yunmi at that time, but she returned them later, and in the end Seon sold them to Taehan at a low price. Seeing Yunmi's surprised expression, Jae-ho finally understood. Seon did not tell him about this, and he helped Seon cover up for her. He was probably afraid that Yunmi would be resentful and did not mention it, although Yunmi said it was okay. The hatred in her heart deepened even more. Whether it was the man she introduced earlier or the matching ring she gave herself, it turned out to be something that someone else left behind and didn't want. Seon was the only one who thought of herself. Just then, Jae-ho received a call from Seon. After the call, Yunmi's stomach suddenly ached. The two of them temporarily stopped at a service area, but after Yunmi went to the bathroom, she didn't have any symptoms at all. Instead, she applied a light layer of lipstick. However, the determination in her eyes was growing stronger. Jae-ho's words kept running through her mind. Then Yunmi began to rinse her hands repeatedly with water. Sure enough, once they went outside, Jae-ho took hold of her hands. Seeing how cold Yunmi's hands were, he was certain that it was indigestion from dinner. He then pressed on the acupuncture points to promote digestion. Afterwards, he even tenderly patted Yunmi's back. Seeing Jae-ho's attentive and serious appearance, Yunmi's mouth revealed an imperceptible smile. After returning home, Seon directly told Jae-ho that she wanted to bring her mother home to live. But unexpectedly, Jae-ho actually wanted to give her a few days to convince his mother. Seon suddenly became angry. Why should she get her mother-in-law's consent in order to bring her seriously ill mother home to take care of her? She is not some idle young lady who does nothing at home. After fruitless discussions, the next day Seon directly picked up her mother. However, out of trust for Yunmi, Seon even asked Yunmi to quit her part-time job at the restaurant to help her mother cook. Although Yunmi had already made up her mind, she still pretended to care about Seon. If her mother-in-law knew about this, she would definitely cause a scene again. Unexpectedly, Seon became angry when she heard about this. Yunmi had no choice but to stroke Seon's little head and comfort her. It is precisely at times like these that one must not lose one's composure. No one has the right to judge anyone for fulfilling their filial duties. If one has to seek one's mother-in-law's approval for such things, then one has failed as a daughter in this life. A few days later, Yunmi heard that Seon would not be coming to the office for some reason, so she snuck into Seon's office and turned on the computer. She took pictures of all the jewelry design work, but unexpectedly, Seon suddenly burst in. Luckily Yunmi reacted quickly and said that the patent would expire this month, so she came to help Seon organize the information. Seon was relieved to hear this explanation. Yunmi didn't let out a long sigh of relief until she walked out of the building. The next day, she dragged Jae-ho to the supermarket, saying that she wanted to help them repair their conflicts with their elders. The waiter immediately asked Yunmi if she was picking out clothes for her husband. Hearing this, Yunmi revealed a smile she had never had before, but she could only explain that she was picking out clothes for her father. But she didn't go into too much detail about who the father was for. After the two finished shopping, Yunmi specifically told Jae-ho that this matter must be kept a secret from Seon. But what neither of them expected was that Seon had also come to the mall with a client at this time. Using the corner of her eye, she noticed something unusual, but when she looked carefully on the escalator, she didn't see anything. In the evening, the two of them even went to the beach. Watching Yunmi as she hid from the waves, Jaeho's eyes seemed to hide an uncontainable joy. He even thoughtfully put a jacket on her, but Yoonmi returned the jacket. Yoonmi told Jaeho about the memories of the past. Once, she had followed Jaeho's family to this beach. That was the best memory of her life. Jaeho tried hard to remember and then remembered that it was something that happened during the summer vacation of a certain year. Yoonmi felt that it was really carefree at that time. Passers-by thought they were a newlywed couple. Afterwards, the two of them hid from the waves just like they did back then. I don't know if it was because he felt guilty. Jaeho even brought a box of fruit back home. But when he saw Seon's mother, his expression changed. Jaeho took Seon to her room and asked what was going on. "Didn't you say you would wait a few days before making a decision?" However, Seon did exactly as Yoonmi had said and argued back. "What's wrong with me taking my mother to my home to fulfill my filial duty? Besides, I don't need a single penny from you. I didn't rely on you to support my mother. Now this matter is settled." The next day, Yoonmi came to Seon's house as promised to cook for her mother. Unexpectedly, Jaeho also brought a takeaway sushi home to make Seon happy. Since Seon's mother was taking a nap, the two of them had a low-key chat. Jaeho was very grateful to Yoonmi for helping him choose clothes, and said that his father had never before praised his choice of clothes. He used the method Yoonmi had taught him to thoroughly make his father happy all day. While the two of them were whispering, Seon's mother happened to walk out of her room. She didn't realize that she had overheard their conversation. Jaeho said, "Come find me in a few days to finish what we started." Seon's mother immediately rushed out and questioned Jaeho as to why he wasn't going to work. Jaeho explained, "I came to give you your favorite sushi." After Jaeho left, she stared at Yoonmi with wide eyes and asked what kind of evil scheme she had in mind that she would dare to speak so closely to Jaeho. Yoonmi explained that she was afraid that the loud voices would disturb her sleep. Seon's mother immediately told her to leave. After Yoonmi came out, she called Seon and told her what had just happened. But Seon also didn't know why her mother was so hostile towards Yoonmi. She could only keep apologizing to Yoonmi. After hanging up the phone, Seon ran back. Before she could say a word, her mother directly complained, saying that she had just seen the two of them leaning really close to each other and talking, and they were really not at all shy. Seon told her mother that Jaeho was thanking Yoonmi by deciding to repair her face for free. However, no matter what Seon said, her mother always believed that Yoonmi was definitely someone with a problem. Not only did she never feel like an outsider when she visited the house as a child, but she also always had the image of being a good person, who accepts everything without question. No one could ever figure out what she was thinking, but Seon felt that her mother must be sick because she was so suspicious. She immediately said, "Even if I don't have Jaeho, I can't do without Yoonmi." But her mother told her to be careful what she said, as she might get into trouble. But what Seon never expected was that her words had hit the nail on the head. She had just returned to the office when she suddenly heard the sound of a password being entered outside the door. Seon's mother instantly thought of her daughter's warning, "If it's the mother-in-law, don't open the door." She looked through the peephole and sure enough, it was the mother-in-law. Frightened, her mother quickly dialed Seon's phone number. On the other end, Jaeho also received a call from his mother, who told him to give her the password. She wanted to enter the door right now. Jaeho was scared and hurried back. Unexpectedly, when her mother saw Jaeho, she became even more arrogant and told him to watch from the side. He would definitely crack the password. But Jaeho just dragged his mother out and put her in a taxi. At this time, Seon also happened to return here. She said that she could not hide this matter. If they met again next time, her mother might really become seriously ill. Seon told Jaeho to tell her mother-in-law directly about this matter, and let her not directly rush to other people's homes like this in the future. Seeing that Jaeho was taking a long time to make a move, Seon took out her phone and was about to call her mother-in-law to tell her, but Jaeho told her to calm down and that he would handle the situation. However, while the two were fighting over the phone, Jaeho accidentally pushed Seon to the ground. This completely broke Seon's heart. She ignored Jaeho's outstretched hand and got up, saying that she wanted a divorce. A depressed Jaeho went to Yoonmi to vent about the situation. When she heard Seon propose divorce, Yoonmi's pupils contracted for a moment. Unfortunately, Jaeho did not notice this detail, but continued to talk about the two mothers. However, Yoonmi said something completely different at this time. She said that most elders are like this, and as juniors, tolerating one person is just fine. Seon has a very strong sense of pride and ambition. She has never suffered much since she was young. Now she has calmed down a lot. Although what happened to her mother was also very worrying. Seon was also under a lot of pressure when she first got married to deal with her father's debts. That's why she delayed having children. I don't know if Yoonmi said this on purpose or by accident, but it seemed like she had let slip a secret that Seon had always wanted to hide. That day Yoonmi went to take care of Seon's mother as usual. Yoonmi first gave her a comfortable bath. Seon's mother even said that her skills could be used as a head masseuse. She even encouraged Yoonmi to go for an interview the next day. Although Yoonmi was humiliated, she still cooked a delicious meal, but Seon's mother still wouldn't let her off the hook. First, she perfunctorily praised her cooking skills, saying that she could open a restaurant. Then she took issue with Yoonmi's appearance. Not only did she carry a bag that her daughter Seon had given her, but the clothes she was wearing were also gifts from Seon. Seon's mother even asked Yoonmi if she remembered paying her tuition when she was young. Her purpose in saying these things was to make Yoonmi understand that Seon was a simple person who had always taken good care of Yoonmi, but she told her not to think that Seon treating her this way meant she could presume to be on the same level as their family, and not to covet things she wasn't capable of picking up. Yoonmi wasn't stupid and understood that this was telling her to keep her distance from Jae-ho. When she left, she happened to meet Jae-ho, who had just returned home. Jae-ho had listened to every word the two had said. That night, he had a long talk with Seon. Jae-ho said very seriously that couples should not keep secrets from each other. He was trying to get Seon to talk about the debt, but Seon deliberately avoided the issue. Jae-ho, who had wanted to lose his temper, had to go to the bathroom and use cold water to calm himself down. The next day Yoonmi called to ask, and she was surprised that Jae-ho had forgiven her so easily. Seon, although Seon had hidden this from him for 7 years, she was also under a lot of pressure. Jae-ho even thanked Yoonmi for telling him, so that he understood how difficult it had been for Seon over the years. Hearing this, Yoonmi's eyes lost their sparkle, but Yoonmi immediately found an excuse to get Seon something. However, as soon as Seon saw Yoonmi, she began apologizing for her mother and defending her mother at the same time. Perhaps it was because of her health that she had become so sensitive, but Yoonmi did not respond, instead asking Seon if she had made up with Jae-ho, and after receiving a positive reply, Yoonmi began to act up again, saying that she could not keep on being weak like this, and that since getting married, she had kept on backing down, which would only make others take advantage of her. Only by refusing appropriately can people understand that you are not so easy to bully. If you even need to look at other people's faces to act in such matters, then you and your daughter will never have a good life. Yoonmi persuaded Seon again, and it seemed that Seon had regained her confidence. However, her plan did not end there. After leaving Seon's house, she carried 2 large bags of things and went to Seon's mother-in-law's house under the pretext of helping with the cleaning. The mother-in-law was more and more satisfied with Yoonmi, saying that she would be a good daughter-in-law if she were her daughter-in-law, but she didn't expect her to scold Seon again. However, Yoonmi defended Seon at this time, saying that her company has been particularly busy recently. After that, she deliberately let slip the news that Seon's mother was at home. Sure enough, the mother-in-law was furious when she heard this. She rushed out directly, ready to teach a lesson to the mother and daughter. Yoonmi ran after her, calling Seon on the phone the whole way. But Seon hesitated when she heard the police. She asked Yoonmi to help her stall her mother-in-law while she rushed home. When the mother-in-law arrived, she ordered Yoonmi to open the door. Although Yoonmi appeared to be struggling, she still opened the door trembling. At this time, Seon's mother was not at all the spirited person she had been when facing Yoonmi. Instead, she was like a little girl who had done something wrong, apologizing to her mother-in-law non-stop. She said that she would only be here for a few days and then leave. Just as her mother was about to lose her temper, Seon rushed back. Although her mother told her to apologize quickly, Seon felt that she had done nothing wrong. Instead, she told her mother-in-law to leave her house quickly. Seeing her mother-in-law's attitude, Seon became more and more agitated as she spoke. It seemed that she wanted to vent all the grievances she had suffered over the years, but she didn't expect her mother-in-law to just sit down on the sofa. If her mother doesn't leave, then I will stay here forever. When she heard Seon say she was going to call the police, she poured a glass of water over her. Jae-ho came home from work and saw his mother being led out by 2 policemen. He immediately went up to them to ask what was going on. When she saw her son, she couldn't hold back her tears and kept telling him about her grievances. She also listed Seon's crimes one by one. Hearing this, Jae-ho's eyes also reddened. After he sent his mother away, he also angrily questioned Seon why she had to make such a scene. Even if the old man is wrong in every way, he is still her mother. Seeing the conflict between the two escalate, Yoonmi's smile could no longer be hidden. That night, she even found Jae-ho, who was drunk alone, and gently patted his little hand. She also said that she was shocked when she saw the police in the afternoon. She didn't think Seon would actually report to the police. However, Jae-ho never imagined that the idea of reporting to the police was completely suggested by Yoonmi to Seon. The ridiculous thing is that Yoonmi was still speaking from Seon's perspective. She also felt very uncomfortable when this kind of thing happened. At this time, a man should show generosity and compassion. Unexpectedly, Jae-ho actually followed Yoonmi's advice. The next day, he sent a message to Seon. First was a very sincere apology. Then came the news that a hotel reservation had been successfully made. He said that he wanted Seon to go on vacation with her mother to relax and unwind. He would stay here and take care of the aftermath of this matter. After reading this sincere apology, Sean also sent the message to Yunmi asking if it was a bad idea for her to go on a trip right after having a big fight with her mother-in-law, but she had no idea that this was Yunmi's plan. Yunmi definitely strongly encouraged Sean to go out and relax for a while, and said that she would take care of her daughter for her during that time. Sean also felt that this was a feasible plan, and decided to go after she finished her current task in the next few days, perhaps stimulated by Seon's mother. Yunmi worked harder and harder to prepare for the teacher's exam. Even when she had a nosebleed, she just wiped it off. Yunmi was also taking the teacher's exam for the 4th time. 2 days later, Seon went out with her mother. She had just gotten off the plane when she ran into a high school classmate. While they were chatting, Seon complained about the trivial things that had happened recently. Unexpectedly, this man asked Seon to come back to him. He also said that he hadn't been able to date other women for so many years, because she was always in his heart. The man immediately said, "Have you forgotten what happened in Italy?" Although I still don't know what happened in Italy. The two of them went for a walk on the beach afterwards, seeing the other person's eyes. Seon said that she was a married woman, but just as she was about to leave, the man grabbed her. She never imagined that this high school classmate who seemed to have appeared by coincidence was actually also planned by Yunmi. After learning that Seon was going on a trip, Yunmi found the man who had always had a crush on Seon. Not only did she tell the man Seon's itinerary, she also told him everything that had happened during that time. At this point, Yunmi had already come to Seon's house under the guise of babysitting and barged into her bedroom. She stroked the objects in the room, fantasizing that everything belonged to her. She even soaked in someone else's bathtub and enjoyed herself. Yunmi acted as if she was the mistress of the house. Jae-ho opened a bottle of red wine when he returned and reminisced about the past. Yunmi first talked about how close the two of them had been. Not only had they watched movies together, they had even shared a bucket of instant noodles. Then she suddenly seemed to remember something and became coy and shy. Jae-ho's curiosity was piqued and he hurriedly asked her what she had thought of. Yunmi boldly said that back then, everyone thought the two of them were having an affair. Jae-ho suddenly realized that at that time, the two of them did act a little like a couple. But Yunmi said that wasn't the most outrageous thing. Jae-ho thought he had done something outrageous at that time. But Yunmi shook his head and said he hadn't done anything wrong. "We just kissed." As they chatted, she talked about her relationship with Seon. Yunmi said with a self-deprecating smile that Seon's mother was right. She always caused Seon trouble and took advantage of her. "The clothes and bags in my closet are basically all from Seon. But I've always been like a transparent person next to her. Maybe Seon's friends haven't even known my name for so long. I've been hanging out with Seon since high school. I've always envied everything she has." After Yunmi finished speaking, she couldn't help but shed tears of sadness. Jae-ho also saw her weak side for the first time. He immediately sat over and put his arm around Yunmi's shoulders. Yunmi leaned against Jae-ho and cried. But Yunmi knew exactly how to handle a man, so she leaned against him for just a few seconds and then made an excuse to go back to her room. Jae-ho gently comforted her at the door and let her stay there for the night. Unexpectedly, Yunmi immediately changed her expression when she returned to her room. Not only did she put on the expensive silk pajamas, she also sprayed perfume on her neck. Her mind was filled with images of the humiliation she had suffered. Yunmi slowly let her hair down. When she saw herself in the mirror, she thought she was the most beautiful woman in the world. She also made up her mind to take back what was rightfully hers that night. In the middle of the night, Jae-ho got up to get a drink of water. He didn't expect to find Yunmi standing on the balcony in the wind. Jae-ho asked her what she was doing there. Yunmi slowly turned around. Jae-ho's eyes were glued to her. Jae-ho couldn't help but swallow. When Yunmi approached, Jae-ho seemed afraid and wanted to go back to his room, but Yunmi grabbed his arm. That day, Yunmi's mother accidentally saw Yunmi's father secretly washing his hair in a hair salon. Her mother lost her mind and wanted to teach the boss a lesson on the spot. Her father, who fled in a panic, not only did not go to stop her, but instead scolded Yunmi for not stopping her mother from coming over and causing trouble. With such a father, Yunmi can only sigh helplessly. When she returned home, Yunmi looked at her crying and screaming mother and was even more at a loss, because this was not the first time her father had done something like that. Yunmi directly advised her mother to divorce if she really couldn't get along. But her mother said, "I have been holding my tongue for the sake of my daughter. A daughter who has also suffered from the same scum should be able to understand her feelings now. You actually don't want to comfort me, but say something cold-hearted." My younger sister, who was hiding in her room, couldn't bear to listen anymore. She rushed out and asked her mother if she was crazy, always opening her sister's wounds. The angry mother didn't care about that anymore. She yelled at her daughters for being heartless. At this point, "You should have lectured your father instead." My younger sister said that they were tired. After all, this wasn't the first time. You never consider how we feel when we see these things. All you care about is money. It's true that our family has always been poor, but if you're poor, at least you should have a harmonious family, instead of constantly fighting in front of the children. What can we learn from our parents? Listening to her mother's words, Yoonmi couldn't stand it anymore. She asked her mother to reflect on herself before yelling at them. We have become so indifferent because of you and dad. Yoonmi, who had left, went to the store to find her father to solve the problem. But her father shamelessly said that he was just going to the hair salon to eat fruit. Yoonmi questioned him, saying, "Do you need to sit on someone's lap and be fed with your mouth to eat fruit?" Instead of answering, my father scolded her. You know what will happen when your mother comes over. But you don't stop her. You're already 40. But you still don't understand human nature. My father then angrily scolded Yoonmi's mother for causing him to lose face in front of his children. If it weren't for the fact that I didn't want my children to grow up without a mother, I would have long since stopped wanting to see that stinking woman. My sister knew that this time again would be futile, so she directly told her sister to leave. However, Yoonmi, who had left, still chose to help her parents deal with this matter. She told her sister to go home and not think about it, since she couldn't solve her parents' problem. She would find the root of the problem and solve it. Yoonmi went directly to the hair salon where her father often went. She politely asked the other person to open the door first. The woman thought Yoonmi was an easy target because she looked so honest. She said she was going to the hospital to get a diagnosis and sue her mother. Yoonmi suddenly changed her expression and warned her not to try it. The woman was suddenly scared by her temperament and didn't say a word. That night, Yoonmi cornered Jaeho. She was about to take the next step when she was suddenly interrupted by the child in the room. When Jaeho came out after comforting the child, there was only a message left by Yoonmi. Her departure kept Jaeho up all night. Jaeho kept replaying the scene in his mind where he was cornered, and Yoonmi's graceful swimming posture. He had no choice but to drink a few shots of hard liquor to help him fall asleep quickly. The next day, the three of them went to the amusement park and put on matching hairbands. While Yoonmi was buying ice cream for the kids, Jaeho saw some red balloons nearby. Without thinking, he bought 3, while the 3 of them were having lunch. The waiter said that he could take a free family photo. He asked Jaeho if he wanted to take one. Unexpectedly, he didn't make it clear about their relationship with each other and took the initiative to sit over. Afterwards, Yoonmi received a phone call from Sian asking about the situation at home. Yoonmi told her the truth about bringing the child to the amusement park. Sian was very happy to hear it. She hadn't been to a place like that for a long time. However, all of this was heard by Sian's mother. An ominous feeling immediately came to mind. She couldn't care less about this outing and told Sian to go home immediately. Sian's mother didn't trust this woman at all. Sian knew that her mother was so sensitive because of her late father, who had had an affair with his secretary. But Sian was not only extremely confident, she also never took Yoonmi seriously, even though her mother could not deny it. And as someone who had been there herself, she knew that one had to be careful and not give the two of them any time alone. Her mother still firmly believed that her instincts were not wrong and asked Sian to take her home right away. It started snowing as the 3 of them returned from the amusement park that night. The 2 were planning to have a cup of coffee later and where to go to see the snow scene tomorrow. Jaeho received a phone call from Sian saying that she had brought her mother back home. Yoonmi's expression instantly fell, but she also sensibly asked Jaeho to pull over. After getting out of the car, Yoonmi walked down the street in a daze. I don't know if it was because the plan was ruined or for some other reason. What's worse is that when the oncoming passers-by brushed past each other, they collided, and the red balloon Jaeho had given her came loose. But Yoonmi quickly adjusted her mentality and went to the library to continue her studies. But after a while, she received a message from Jaeho. When Yoonmi rushed out, Jaeho picked up her little head in his hands and slowly leaned in. The two of them just tasted each other's lips in the snow. But when the camera panned, Yoonmi was still sitting in the library. It turned out that it was all just her fantasy, but she looked at the family photo taken today and her face was still filled with an incredibly happy smile. What she didn't know was that Jaeho also suddenly woke up from his sleep. Jaeho rushed into the bathroom and kept washing his face with cold water, but Yoonmi's swimming scene just wouldn't go away in his mind. The next day, Yoonmi came to take care of Sian's mother as usual, and she was questioned. "Why did you take my granddaughter to the amusement park to play? Sian is not a mean person and will not argue with you. But I am different. If you continue to behave like this in the future, don't blame me for being rude." Yoonmi is not someone to be trifled with these days. She directly warned Sian's mother not to push her too far, or else she would have to bear the consequences. On the other side, Sian's mother-in-law threw away the ring Sian had sent her, even though Sian kept apologizing humbly. Her mother-in-law kept scolding her for being heartless. She even swore that she would never forgive Sian in her life, because Sian had called the police and had her thrown out of the house last time. Sian had thought that letting her mother vent would be enough, but she really couldn't stand it when her mother was also humiliated by her mother-in-law. She was so angry that she turned her head and walked away directly. Jaeho couldn't stand it and said a few good words for Sian. Unexpectedly, his actions completely angered her mother. However, as soon as Sian arrived home, she encountered her mother who came to complain. Her mother exaggeratedly told her about Yoonmi's rudeness to her. Now Seon is also holding back a lot of anger, but she also knows her mother's attitude towards Yoonmi recently. She asked her mother not to judge others with a narrow mind. Seon slammed the door when she entered the room. The next day, Seon's jewelry exhibition was about to begin, but she was informed that the exhibited jewelry was a copy of someone else's work. Seon hurriedly gave these photos to Yoonmi next to her, hoping that she could prove that she designed them herself. However, Yoonmi was more flustered than Seon. When Seon proposed to report to the police, Yoonmi hurriedly ran out. Unexpectedly, she met the person she was looking for at the elevator door. This woman was Seon's competitor. Although it was clearly agreed that no one would participate in this exhibition, this person appeared here. However, in the face of Yoonmi's questioning, the woman told her to shut up and said, "Anyway, we are all in the same boat." Soon, they arrived at the police station. Seon was giving a statement when Yoonmi came out to make a phone call. The other party clearly said that it was just for reference. "Why are you using this to frame you now?" Then she said that she had nothing to do with this. After a while, Seon's junior high school classmate Jae-hyuk rushed over and said that he would handle this matter. Seon, who had been at the police station all day, returned home. Jae-ho, however, pulled her and said that they would go see the mother-in-law again at the weekend. He felt that this time it was indeed Seon's fault. Jae-ho also said that after Seon brought her mother to the house, she had to be careful about everything she did. Not only could she not walk around in her underwear as she used to, but she also felt an inexplicable sense of tension whenever she came home. The two of them didn't see eye to eye, and Jae-ho angrily ran out. The next day, Seon told Yoonmi about this, saying that her mother had also noticed Jae-ho's recent changes. Yoonmi's face broke into an imperceptible smile when she heard this. However, at that moment Yoonmi received a message from Jae-ho. Yoonmi immediately explained that it was a text message from a customer. Seon asked her to hurry over and not be late. After the two met, Yoonmi told Jae-ho about going to the police station today, but Yoonmi then asked Jae-ho not to worry, because Seon's classmate Jae-hyuk had taken care of it. Jae-ho immediately asked if it was the classmate Seon met on her last trip. Yoonmi immediately explained to Jae-ho that the two had always been particularly close, and that when they were chatting, Seon had probably let slip the details of her trip. What's more, Jae-hyuk had been infatuated with Seon since they were kids. Unexpectedly, at that very moment, Seon's friend happened to be in the bar and saw Yoonmi and Jae-ho together. She immediately told Seon about it, although Seon said that the two must have been having something to discuss. But after hanging up the phone, she felt as if her soul had been taken away. After returning home, Seon asked Jae-ho who he had been drinking with. Seeing his attitude, Seon angrily went for a walk on the beach. Unexpectedly, she met Jae-hyuk here again. Seeing him thoughtfully put a scarf on her, Seon's grievances seemed to burst through at once. The next day, she told Yoonmi about it, and said that if Jae-ho had treated her that way, she would treat him the same way in return. But what she didn't expect was Yoonmi's confession that she had met with Jae-ho the night before. "I wanted to help you ease your relationship, so I approached Jae-ho to find out what happened last night." Jae-ho kept complaining about her taking her mother home. From the conversation, I could feel that Jae-ho was more inclined to his family's side. "You are not at the top of his priorities." At this time, an employee told Seon that all the jewelry on display had been sold out. The data feedback on this batch of jewelry was particularly good. However, Seon only made this batch, and there was no more inventory of the jewelry. Moreover, at this time, the company did not have any operating funds to use. Yoonmi knew that this was the best opportunity to bring Seon down, so she suggested that Seon should finalize this matter, even if she had to borrow the money. The next day, Jae-hyuk invited Seon to celebrate with her. Seon also habitually asked Yoonmi to come. When Yoonmi arrived, she heard the two talking about her behind her back. Hearing this, Yoonmi walked straight over to them. Seon's expression changed, and she greeted her unnaturally. Jae-hyuk, however, gave Yoonmi a direct look, but after Yoonmi sat down, the two put on a warm face and said some polite things. However, Yoonmi didn't respond, and just turned her head to ask Seon if she wanted to invite Jae-ho to join them. After hearing Seon say no, Yoonmi pretended to answer a phone call, and then she left that disgusting place. But as soon as she arrived home, Yoonmi dialed Seon's phone. Sure enough, Jae-hyuk answered the phone. He said that Seon was so happy today that she was drunk. Yoonmi asked Jae-hyuk to take care of Seon before hanging up. Then she immediately called Jae-ho. Seon threw a celebration party today and invited Jae-hyuk. Although he went over to see for himself, he had to leave early due to a family emergency. After taking care of things, I was a little worried about Seon, so I called. Unexpectedly, Jae-hyuk answered the phone and said that Seon was drunk. After receiving Yoonmi's location, Jae-ho rushed over immediately, but when he entered the house, he heard the two of them talking. Seon said that she quite liked the way she felt right now, but just as a classmate and friend. "I'm afraid that if I'm not careful, I'll fall for her, so you can just stay as my best male friend." When he read this, Jae-ho couldn't help but walk over directly. As soon as the two men met, they started to argue with each other. When shaking hands, Jae-ho wanted to give him a hard time, but Jae-hyuk just smiled slightly and said, Seon has suffered a lot recently. Finally, she's relaxing a bit. Seon, who has always been strong, was slandered as a thief. It was only after selling a lot of jewelry that she recovered, so I treated her to a drink to let her relax. But Jae-ho didn't say anything in response, but stood by the side, telling Seon to wake up quickly. Unexpectedly, Jae-hyuk even directly tried to wake Seon up by patting her on the back. Jae-ho couldn't believe it and opened his hand. No matter how the two of them shouted, they couldn't wake Seon up. Unexpectedly, after getting into the car, Seon suddenly woke up. She even gave Jae-hyuk a few kisses as a farewell. This scene really angered Jae-ho. When he got home, his mother asked Seon what had happened. Jae-ho angrily said that Seon had drunk so much with Jae-hyuk. Then he went to the next room to rest. Not long after, Seon woke up. Her mother told her that Jae-ho seemed very angry and asked her to remember to apologize later. But Seon didn't think much of it. She felt that she had only gone for a drink to celebrate, and she hadn't done anything wrong, so why should she apologize? Jae-ho sulked all night and found Yeonmi. He wanted to know what kind of relationship the two classmates really had, but Yeonmi was still acting like the good old person. Jae-hyuk is just Seon's best opposite-sex friend, but Jae-ho said that he clearly remembered Yeonmi saying before that there is no pure friendship between the opposite sexes. Yeonmi also told him not to think too much about what happened yesterday. Jae-ho knows that the two of them are facing a big challenge this time. What happened during this period of time made Jae-ho understand that he has no idea what kind of person Seon is. From the beginning of reporting his mother to the police to later running into Jae-hyuk by chance, Seon, even when there was a problem at work, the first person she thought of was Jae-hyuk, not herself. When there was a problem with the company's capital change, she also seemed to have gone to Jae-hyuk. Yeonmi thought about Seon's request and could only say vaguely that it was all part of her work, and that Seon was the type of person who kept her work and personal lives separate. Even though Jae-hyuk had once pursued Seon, she had clearly drawn a line. Then Yeonmi left to go to her part-time job. The next day, Yeonmi came to Seon's house as usual to help take care of her mother. At this time, Seon's mother unexpectedly turned on the recording in her room first. After walking out, she deliberately found fault and questioned Yeonmi. Seon was drinking with her classmates. Why did you ask Jae-ho to come over? But the old woman felt that Yeonmi did it on purpose, to let Jae-ho see the two of them drinking together. Although Yeonmi explained that she didn't think so, Seon's mother thought that she wanted to see the two of them fall out so that she could take over Jae-ho. She also mocked Yeonmi for growing up and living off Seon. With her part-time salary, she probably won't last a week before she starves to death on the streets. Yeonmi also nodded and admitted that Seon had indeed been very good to her, but at the same time, she had also caused her irreparable harm. Seon's mother's eyes widened when she heard this. She had never seen such a shameless woman. She eats what others use and then says that others have hurt her. No wonder she is still single at almost 40. It turns out that her mind has been twisted to this extent. She decided to tell Seon about Yeonmi's ugly face. After saying this, Seon's mother ignored her, but she touched her pocket and turned on the recording phone and also decided to completely resolve this Yeonmi woman who hated and reported. Soon, Seon's mother called all three people to her house. She asked Jae-ho to play the recording just now. She looked at the opposite side with a smug look. Yeonmi was apprehensive and didn't know what to do, but the recording only contained the sentence she had said at the beginning. Seon's mother panicked. This was an opportunity she had worked hard to create. Seeing that she couldn't produce any substantial evidence, Yeonmi also ran out with her eyes covered in red. Seon also felt that her mother had really gone too far. However, she still had an important meeting to attend. She grabbed her bag and ran out. Jae-ho, who was left behind, even lectured Seon's mother. On hearing this, the mother-in-law's heart ached. She ran back to her room and took a pack of pills, but it was easy to see from her eyes that she would never let this go. After work, Jae-ho wanted to ask Seon what was going on, but instead, he saw Seon beating up Jae-hyuk. This also caused a crack in Seon's image in his heart. Jae-ho also found Yeonmi and wanted to get the truth. Seeing him so haggard, Yeonmi also placed her hand gently on top to show comfort. Even though Jae-ho was so distracted at this time, he still apologized to Yeonmi for teaching Seon's mother how to record, which caused you such distress. Seon must feel so sorry for you. Yeonmi also vented her innermost thoughts at this time, saying that someone like her who has never received any love from her family since childhood and was born into such poverty, everyone would treat them like a nobody, and easily trample on their dignity. That's why Seon's mother humiliated herself so much. Seeing Yeonmi so upset, Jae-ho also took her little hand and comforted her. He praised Yeonmi for being a particularly cheerful and kind person. Hearing this, Yeonmi's tears instantly streaked down her cheeks. She immediately asked, "Am I someone who deserves to be cherished?" Facing Yeonmi's doubts, he also used actions to prove that what he said was true. When they arrived at the hotel, Yeonmi gently stroked Jae-ho's neck. She didn't know how long she had been standing there, but she finally chose to leave. When Jae-ho woke up, he looked left and right but couldn't find Yoonmi's whereabouts. He only saw the neatly folded clothes on the table and a letter he had left. This was the first time Yoonmi had directly confronted her feelings, which she had hidden for more than 10 years, saying that she had always kept him in the most important place in her heart for many years. After reading the letter, Jae-ho's mind kept recalling the bits and pieces of the time he had spent with Yoonmi, playing at the beach together, the fluttering in his heart when he had hugged Yoonmi without meaning to, and Yoonmi's graceful figure in the swimming pool, the burning gaze she had given him when she was wearing her pajamas, and the things he had just experienced. All of this made Jae-ho conflicted and miserable. He knew it was all a mistake. He wanted to tear up the letter and deceive himself, but in the end, he couldn't bring himself to do it. Instead, he put it in a box in the control room. The next day, when he went to pick up his daughter, he happened to meet Yoonmi at the door. Yoonmi nodded as if she saw a stranger and turned away. However, Jae-ho pulled her back. He asked Yoonmi what he should do. What exactly were their relationships? Yoonmi told him to follow his heart. Jae-ho felt even more confused after hearing this. On the other side, Yoonmi's father drove up to a drunk man. Upon closer inspection, it turned out to be Yoonmi's ex-boyfriend Taehyun. He immediately contacted his younger brother and asked him to bring Yoonmi to a designated location in order to avenge his daughter. He told Yoonmi to do whatever she wanted. Taehyun also woke up at this time. Seeing the three people in front of him, he immediately knelt on the ground. He said that he now had nothing. The wedding failed and he was even fired from his job as a civil servant after finally passing the exam. But Yoonmi could see the disgust in his face. Unexpectedly, Taehyun suddenly tried to hug Yoonmi's thighs. Seeing that the two of them were about to act, Taehyun played a clever trick and ran away. What made Yoonmi even happier was that she received a phone call from Jae-ho the next day. He said that the kindergarten had organized an activity. Yoonmi agreed without thinking. She decided to take this opportunity to get closer to Jae-ho, so she went to the shoe store and picked out a pair of the latest style. When she saw her own stunning appearance in the mirror, Yoonmi's heart also revealed a smug smile. Then she went to change her hairstyle. After arriving at the kindergarten, the children performed a program first. Yoonmi looked at Jae-ho standing nearby, who had inadvertently placed his hand on her shoulder. After that, the kindergarten organized various games. In the end, the balloon-blowing game was Yoonmi's forte. When she received her prize, Yoonmi looked at Jae-ho with undisguised love in her eyes. That day, Seon found Yoonmi's handkerchief in her husband's pocket and asked what was going on. Jae-ho's face changed when he saw it and he explained nervously that the last time he took his daughter to the amusement park, he forgot to return Yoonmi's handkerchief after it got stuck to her body with ice cream. Then he snatched the handkerchief away from her. Seon was very surprised. Do you want to return it yourself? Although Jae-ho's behavior was a bit strange, Seon didn't really care. Seon said that Yoonmi seemed to have really said something inappropriate to her mother. Unexpectedly, Jae-ho began to defend Yoonmi. I saw with my own eyes that your mother always humiliates Yoonmi. Besides, your mother's memory has been confused lately. I bought her sushi for lunch, and she'll forget about it in the afternoon. I think it's necessary for you to take your mother to the hospital for a checkup, and it's also thanks to Yoonmi's good nature that she hasn't lost her temper. If it were anyone else, they would have already exploded. Seon also felt that this made sense when she heard this. Then she asked Jae-ho why he didn't come home until the early morning. Jae-ho hurriedly explained that he had gone drinking with friends. Then her mother took Seon aside and said bad things about Yoonmi. Her words were full of warnings for Seon to be careful of that shameless scheming woman. However, Seon didn't take it to heart, but she felt that she still had to explain to her mother that Yoonmi was especially needed in the family at the moment. Her father's debts would soon be paid off, and her company would take a quantum leap in a few months. Seon implored her mother to bear with her a little longer. Although her mother was unwilling a million times over, she reluctantly agreed for the sake of her daughter. Just then Yoonmi arrived. Seon's mother took the unprecedented initiative to apologize to her, but what she was thinking was to gather more evidence to expose this shameless bitch. That night, Jae-ho returned home and tentatively tried to play games with Seon, but she unexpectedly ran straight out. First, she opened her mother's room and called out twice. After seeing her mother fall asleep, she came to her daughter's room and covered the quilt. Seon made sure they were both asleep before returning to her room. Jae-ho suddenly thought of something in his head and just used it as an excuse to lose interest. The next day, Seon unashamedly told Yoonmi about this matter. Then she returned the handkerchief to Yoonmi, saying that she had found it in Jae-ho's pocket. Yoonmi took the handkerchief very calmly. Then she wiped the table carelessly while secretly watching Seon to see if she noticed anything unusual. Seon suddenly thought of Jae-ho's words, which were completely different from what Yoonmi had just said. She looked at Yoonmi's back and seemed to sense something, but what she didn't expect was that Yoonmi would be so bold, and then called Seon in the evening to meet her at the beach and even asked her to bring Jae-ho along. As soon as they met, Yoonmi went straight to the point and said she had something to tell Seon. The innocent Seon thought Yoonmi had just met a new boyfriend and wanted to tell the two of them, but to her surprise, Yunmi started talking about her first love and that person was not Taehyun. Seon didn't pick up on the hidden meaning in her words. Yunmi also said that the two of them had been together since they were young. Seon was curious to know which man was so charming. She immediately asked if the other person was married. Yunmi nodded directly and said that he is now married and has a daughter. But Seon began to take Yunmi's side. If that's the case, you have to snatch that man. If you're embarrassed to say it, I'll go convey that love for you. However, Yunmi said that people from the lower classes like her would never dare to hope for so-called love, and could only silently accompany and give their love, hoping that one day he would discover their feelings. Unexpectedly, in the end, that person did not understand what she meant. Seeing the tearful Yunmi, Seon quickly comforted her and told her to forget about that heartless man. She also said that it was that man who was not worthy of Yunmi. Not having such a good woman by his side would be a fool with blind eyes. But having said that, Seon also felt a little anxious. After she left, Jae-ho asked Yunmi why she had suddenly said those things. Yunmi just asked with tears in her eyes, "Even if I fell into the water, you would only care about going to the toilet." Seon. The next day, Seon opened Yunmi's bag and there was a photo of the three of them. She asked, somewhat displeased, "What's this about?" Yunmi said that it was taken at an amusement park when the child kept asking for a photo. "I wanted to give it to the child, but I forgot it in my bag." Yunmi also praised the photo, saying that it captured the child's cuteness. Although this explanation was flawless, Seon was still a little upset. She said that the photo looked like a real family. Yunmi immediately explained that I don't even look like the child's mother. Even though she explained like this, a hint of doubt still appeared on Seon's face. Just then, Jae-ho walked in. After Yunmi greeted him, she sensibly went to pack her things. Jae-ho said that his daughter wanted to go eat burgers. He had come to pick Seon up and go together. However, Yunmi had overheard their conversation. While eating burgers, the child said that it would be nice if Aunt Yunmi could come along too. However, Seon's mother told the child that today was a family gathering for their family. The child immediately said, "Aren't aunts part of the family?" Hearing this, the mother turned her head and looked at Seon, saying, "Children don't lie." Yunmi and the child got along so well that it seemed like they were family. Then Seon's mother turned her head again and told the child that she should call Yunmi auntie in the future. Seon also told her daughter that Yunmi was not part of their family. Thinking about the photo she had just seen, the child nodded as if she understood after hearing the two of them explain. But what Seon didn't know was that this photo was the one Yunmi had left in her bag for her to find. It turned out that Yunmi had rushed straight into the sea that day, and Jae-ho had dragged her onto the shore against her will. Seon had even given Yunmi Jae-ho's clothes to wear. The two drunk people even teased Jae-ho together, saying that Yunmi wouldn't be angry if she wore his clothes. Seon felt that it was okay that Jae-ho had arrived in time, otherwise she might not have been able to see Yunmi again. However, Yunmi said, "That's not necessarily true. Maybe there will be other men to save me." But she still apologized to Jae-ho, and said that she was drunk and that there had been a lot of things happening recently, so she had been very impulsive. However, Jae-ho couldn't be happy when he saw the two of them fighting and fooling around, because he understood in his heart why Yunmi had acted that way. After returning home, Seon's drunkenness had mostly worn off. She thought about what Yunmi had just said about her first love and said to Jae-ho, "That person couldn't be you, could it?" Afterwards, Seon found her mother to chat with, but her mother instantly became furious when she heard that Yunmi had worn Jae-ho's clothes, and said that she should have drowned or frozen to death. She was very surprised that her daughter didn't feel anything about this kind of thing, but Seon felt that it was just a matter of wearing clothes. Not a big deal, but her mother really couldn't bear to see it anymore and said that in the future, he should just ask Yunmi to run errands or something. Don't get too close to her. Otherwise, just hire an employee. You must keep your distance from that kind of woman. But Seon simply couldn't think of anyone who was more capable than Yunmi. For the time being, she also couldn't find anyone to replace Yunmi. "It's because you rely on her too much that you think this way." Upon hearing her mother's words, Seon also fell silent. And Yunmi, upon hearing that the family was going out for dinner, ran alone to Seon's house. She sat on the bed in the bedroom and stroked the quilt cover. Then she took out a coat from the closet and slowly embraced it. Finally, she picked up a bottle of lotion from the table and opened the cap, greedily sniffing the scent. But just then, their family had already returned to the underground garage. However, when they arrived home, Yunmi was nowhere to be seen. As soon as Lucy arrived home, she ran to the balcony and shouted, "That person is Yunmi's aunt." Seon's mother heard this and hurried over, but she didn't find anything. But she was still wondering if Yunmi had just been here. However, Seon had complete trust in Yunmi and said, "Why would she come when there's no one at home?" That day, Grandma picked up the doll in Lucy's arms and disliked it, so she leaned over and sniffed it. Then, with a disgusted look on her face, she carried the cute doll out and threw it in the trash by the door. After Jae-ho picked up his daughter, he started screaming and yelling non-stop. He quickly called his sister to help find the doll. wondering if it had fallen somewhere, but his sister couldn't find it after searching for a long time. When she saw her mother coming, she asked, but her mother said nonchalantly that she had seen the doll and it was so dirty that she had thrown it out the door. Yoonmi, who happened to be here, heard this and hurriedly ran out. The evil mother-in-law, however, felt that she had done nothing wrong. It was really ridiculous that a 7-year-old child still had to hug that kind of thing to fall asleep. Now she even suspected that the child was not her granddaughter at all. However, Yoonmi, who had run out, had not seen that the doll trash had long been collected by the workers. Jae-ho, who had received the news, called Seon to find out if she had bought more dolls as a spare. However, Seon was too busy participating in activities to pay attention to this matter. In contrast, Yoonmi ran to the supermarket where she had bought the doll before, but was told that the model had been discontinued and was no longer for sale. However, she told Jae-ho not to worry and that she would find a way to deal with this matter. However, after running to many supermarkets, she still couldn't find the same model. So Yoonmi posted a reward online, because Lucy had been in a similar situation before and had even cried herself into the emergency room. That's why they were in such a hurry. When Yoonmi arrived at Jae-ho's house, Lucy immediately threw herself into her arms. However, Seon's mother not only didn't thank Yoonmi for her help, but also ran into the room to call Seon and ask her to hurry back and deal with this matter. However, at this time, Seon met an old acquaintance at the banquet, so naturally the phone did not connect. Fortunately, Yoonmi received the news soon after. A woman called and said that there was a doll of the same model, but it was about a 2-hour drive away. Jae-ho immediately asked Yoonmi to go with him, but Seon's mother told Yoonmi to go alone. So Yoonmi found her uncle who drove a taxi. Her uncle simply could not understand why Yoonmi would do this for her friend's child, but he had no idea what Yoonmi's purpose was. As Yoonmi urged him, her uncle quickly rushed over, and after confirming that it was the same doll, she let out a long sigh of relief. Meanwhile, Seon was still at the party, smiling and raising her glass, but after Yoonmi delivered the doll, Jae-ho took it and ran away directly. Yoonmi was stunned by his actions. Her uncle, sitting in the car, saw Yoonmi's lost bag and seemed to understand something. After returning home, Yoonmi called Lucy to check on her, and when she heard Jae-ho's apology, Yoonmi also smiled and said she would get more of the same doll just in case. Before hanging up, Yoonmi also tactfully asked about Seon's situation. However, Jae-ho was a little angry when he heard that the person had not answered the phone until now. It wasn't until 2 a.m. that Jae-ho heard a knock on the door, but when he opened the door, he saw that Seon was actually carried back by Jae-hyuk. After she sobered up, Jae-ho also vented the anger he had been holding in. He questioned Seon why, even though Lucy had caused such a scene, you could still so carefree drink like that at the party. Seon also explained that she wasn't there for fun, but for work and socializing. But Jae-ho knew that she wasn't the organizer and could have left early. Unexpectedly, this comment directly angered Seon. Although I did something wrong in this matter, but for 7 years I have not only taken care of the family but also juggled my career. Jae-ho directly asked her to feel her conscience. Every morning I feed the baby and help her get dressed, but Seon felt that had nothing to do with her. That was a bad habit he had been used to since he was a child. It is not easy to go out and work hard for money. It is not because I like it that I go drinking. Last time I wanted to borrow money and I didn't know who to ask, so I thought I would take this opportunity to get to know my business partners. I work hard not just for myself, but for my family. That's why I work so hard. Jae-ho said that you work hard because of the debt your father owed. Seon's expression instantly distorted when she heard this, but Jae-ho didn't give her the chance to refute. I know that the man who just walked you home was once in school with you. Seon found that there wasn't a single photo of herself in the album when she looked through it the next day. An uncomfortable feeling instantly welled up in her heart. The next day when she went to the office, she ran into Taehan again. Taehan greeted her warmly, but Seon insulted him. Then she asked Taehan how he had been recently. Taehan then took out the video of Yoonmi messing up at his wedding. Seon couldn't believe that the gentle and obedient Yoonmi would do such a thing. But Taehan kept saying nonsense on the side. But Seon still had things to do, so the two of them made an appointment to talk about it in detail next time. After arriving at the office, Seon picked up Yoonmi's necklace, which she had left behind. When she looked at it in her hand, she realized that it had been torn off by brute force. With a heavy face, she paced around and finally sent a message to Yoonmi. As soon as Yoonmi entered the door, Seon directly asked if it was you who told Jae-hyuk about the last trip. Unexpectedly, Yoonmi directly admitted, I just hope you and your mother can have some fun. Seon felt that even if she wanted to give herself a surprise, she should have told me after she came back. Yoonmi explained that Jae-hyuk told her not to say, but Seon did not give up. She questioned Yunmi if she had told Jaeho about paying off the debt. Of course Yunmi would not admit it and told her to ask Jaeho. Seon was instantly unhappy and crossed her arms, and questioned whether she often contacted Jaeho in private. But Seon seemed to have completely lost confidence in Yunmi, and asked her seriously who her first love was, since the two of them had grown up together. She had never known that Yunmi had had such a first love. Yunmi's nervous pupils instantly dilated, and she stuttered, saying that it was a one-sided crush, and that she felt particularly ashamed, which was why she hadn't told you. But Seon had already made up her mind that this time she would get to the bottom of it. Could it be that person is Jaeho? Seon's IQ suddenly soared. Looking back, Yunmi was the one who first met Jaeho. The two had completely different accounts of the handkerchief incident, but Seon simply didn't believe that Yunmi's memory was better than average. She had had the photo in her bag for so long and still hadn't given it to her, and it was in such a conspicuous place. Yunmi's face instantly changed when she saw the aggressive Seon. She directly admitted that she likes Jaeho. Since you found out, I might as well not pretend. From now on, the two of you will compete fairly. However, when the camera panned, all of this was just Yunmi's fantasy. She simply did not have the courage to face Seon. Instead, she asked Seon with tears in her eyes, "Do you not believe in your best friend?" But Seon asked her where her necklace had gone. Before Yunmi could reply, she took it out of the drawer. Yunmi hurriedly explained that it might have been because she had an allergic reaction to the necklace, so she had taken it off and it had fallen off during that time. Seon immediately said that someone had deliberately pulled it off. Then she directly grabbed the necklace, and her actions completely chilled Yunmi. Yunmi never imagined that she would be such a person in Seon's heart. Before, when her mother was slandering, she thought that Seon was genuinely speaking up for her, although she is not as capable as Seon and has also received a lot of help from her. But how could you have such ridiculous thoughts about me? After saying this, Yunmi rushed out of the room. However, when she reached the corner, her hand holding the necklace was shaking. That night, she found Jaeho. Unexpectedly, Jaeho confessed before her, "I have been suffering all day. I haven't noticed it for so many years. It turns out that the person who truly understands me has always been by my side, although I have been trying to avoid it. I can't deceive my own heart. Every morning when I wake up, the first thing that comes to mind is you." At this time, Seon's mother ran into the two of them downstairs at home. She just walked up to say something when she suddenly fainted. When Seon arrived at the hospital, her mother also opened her eyes and pointed at the two people behind her with a hideous face. But due to her lack of strength, she fainted again. After settling her mother, Seon asked the two how they knew her mother had fainted. "Could it be that you were together at the time?" Yunmi saw the fidgety Jaeho and quickly picked up the conversation. "I was going to bring your mother dinner. I happened to meet Jaeho at the entrance to the community. We were saying hello when your mother happened to come out, but for some reason she suddenly fainted." Seon was also impressed when she heard this. Her mother was so lucky. In such cold weather, if she hadn't been discovered, the consequences would have been unimaginable. She said something thanking Yunmi and let her go home first. She would take care of her mother here. Before leaving, Yunmi told Seon to contact her if anything happened. After arriving home, Yunmi sent a message to Jaeho, telling him not to worry as long as they stick to the same story. Seon also told Jaeho to go home and rest. If her mother didn't wake up, they might have to ask her younger brothers to take turns watching over her. Jaeho contacted Yunmi as soon as he got out and drove straight to her house. "I'm worried that you'll be feeling bad, and I wanted to see you before I went home." Jaeho also really wanted to know what Yunmi thought about the two of them, but I never expected Yunmi to say that she didn't even have any extravagant expectations. "Knowing that he has her in his heart is enough for me. Even if I have to live in the dark for the rest of my life, it doesn't matter. Just living day to day as it is now is enough." These words immediately made Jaeho's eyes fill with tears. He never imagined that Yunmi could be so understanding. Even in this situation, she doesn't force or pressure herself. And Yunmi, seeing his face, added, "I didn't confess everything because I wanted to see him suffer. In the future, I will hide this feeling in my heart and silently stand behind him. At least now he understands his own heart." After she finished speaking, she took Jaeho's big hand and carefully kissed the back of it. Jaeho also trembled and touched Yunmi's little face. The next day, Seon received another piece of bad news. A jewelry item exactly the same as her design appeared on the market. Although the jewelry on it was very poor quality, consumers didn't care about this at all and demanded refunds. Seon could only report this plagiarism to the police. She also asked Yunmi to contact Jaehyuk and go to the police station together to deal with it. However, the police station was at a loss for what to do in the face of such a thing. Just then, Seon received another delivery message. The new batch of gems she ordered from overseas had been delivered. Yunmi said she would go back to the company to help sign for it. Just as she was about to go out, she ran into Jaeho, who had arrived. But when she saw Jaehyuk there, Jaeho didn't even want to go in. Yunmi returned to the office to sign for the delivery and then made a phone call. She questioned why they were doing such petty things. If they didn't stop, then she wouldn't hold back. But the woman who heard this laughed and said that Yoonmi could do whatever she wanted. Just then, Sian rushed back. Jae-ho was stunned when he saw the delivery on the table. He questioned Sian why she had ordered so much at once. Seeing Sian sigh, Yoonmi quickly helped her explain that she had planned to make the products in bulk because they were always sold out. Jae-ho also asked concernedly how much money had been lost, but Sian wasn't sure at the moment, and said that if there were a lot of returns, they might have to pay 100 million won in compensation. The loss could be 2 or 3 times that much. Jae-ho immediately said, "Who told you to be brave if you're not capable?" Hearing this, Sian couldn't hold back anymore. "You don't even know how to comfort me. I'm already suffering enough from this mess. I can't understand why you're still talking to yourself in this manner." Seeing Sian about to collapse, Yoonmi also asked Jae-ho to leave first. However, Jae-ho was also unable to let go of his worries and went to find his mother to borrow money. Unexpectedly, after hearing about Sian's situation, she couldn't sit still. The mother-in-law rushed to Sian's company and scolded her, telling her to hurry and pay her back, even though Sian kept promising to pay back the money, including interest. Her mother-in-law simply ignored her and demanded that she pay up right now. Seeing her mother-in-law's attitude of rubbing salt in the wound, Sian completely exploded. Seeing that the two were about to fight, Yoonmi quickly pulled her mother-in-law out. That night, she went to the river to blow in the wind, seemingly not wanting to deal Sian any more blows. Then she sent Jae-ho a breakup text message. The next day Yoonmi went to see Sian with lunch. Just then Sian received a call from the hospital saying that her mother had woken up. She happily hugged Yoonmi. However, Yoonmi's pupils suddenly dilated, worrying that her own affairs had been exposed. Fortunately, Sian still had a meeting to attend, so Yoonmi said she would go to the hospital first to check on the situation. After arriving at the hospital, she first exchanged pleasantries with Sian's mother for a while, and then she asked Sian's mother, "Do you know why she fainted?" The mother tilted her eyes to the side and tried to recall. Yoonmi's hand was clenched tightly around her bag, her eyes staring at the woman in the hospital bed. When she heard the other party's reply, "I don't remember," Yoonmi confirmed again. After getting the same answer again and again, Yoonmi still couldn't put her mind at ease. She asked Sian's mother to think more carefully. After confirming again and again that she really couldn't remember, Yoonmi finally let go of her worries. Yoonmi immediately said that Sian would come over after the meeting. However, after she left the house, Sian's mother clenched her fists tightly. The expression on her face, which seemed to want to kill Yoonmi, was no longer concealed. As soon as Yoonmi came out, she ran into Sian, who had just arrived. "Your mother is not in any danger. She also remembers what happened that day." She casually asked Sian how the meeting went. When she heard that the police were going to be called to arrest someone, Yoonmi's expression instantly became unnatural, but she could only wish Sian luck in catching the murderer soon. After Sian went in, Yoonmi looked thoughtfully for a moment, not knowing what she was planning in her heart. When her mother saw Sian, she asked where Yoonmi had gone. Sian thought she was looking for Yoonmi for something. She got up and was about to go find Yoonmi, but her mother quickly pulled her back. "I pretended to be asleep because Yoonmi was here." Sian, who was confused, looked puzzled. At that moment, her mother told her what she had seen that night, and that she had suddenly felt breathless and fainted because she had witnessed that scene. Her mother felt that Yoonmi had been particularly terrifying just now. If she revealed that she remembered what had happened that night, she might have already died. But it was not the time to reveal the truth yet. She told Sian not to worry. After she recovered, she would make them pay. At this time, Jae-ho also found his mother and asked what had happened. His mother said that Sian had come to her before and insisted that she invest in her. She also said that it would not take long to pay back the principal and interest, but she never expected that in the end she would lose everything. However, Yoonmi said that it was Jae-hyuk who lent Sian the money. However, upon hearing this, Jae-ho instantly sensed that something was wrong. On the other side, Sian went to Taehan after leaving the hospital. She finally understood why Taehan had told her to be careful of the people closest to her. He had also kept telling her that Yoonmi was a scary woman. When Taehan saw her like that, he knew that Sian must have found something. However, he reminded Sian that Yoonmi would never admit to it without concrete evidence. After that, Sian secretly looked through Jae-ho's phone, but there was nothing unusual on it, so she stole Jae-ho's car keys. On the car's black box, she found that Jae-ho had indeed gone to see Yoonmi, and the time on it was that day. But she knew that this object could not prove anything, so she started looking through the car again, and found the letter that Jae-ho had left in the center console. After reading the letter, Sian was so angry that she almost died where she stood. She would never let this shameless woman go. Then Sian first asked Yoonmi to come over, and she knocked Yoonmi to the ground. Her sharp eyes looked as if she were looking at a dead person. Yoonmi could only stand up trembling. Sian asked if she knew why she had hit her. Yoonmi wisely shook her head. Not long after, Jae-ho also arrived. Sian told him to go sit across from her. Jae-ho could only obediently go sit across from her when he saw her murderous expression. After everyone arrived, Sian started to vent her anger, giving the two no chance to respond. The couple really do look best together. What? You're my first balloon? You're out of your mind. Sian stood up without warning and slapped Yunmi again. Then she turned her attention to Jaeho. Sian was curious if someone comparing him to a balloon meant he should fly off happily. The kind of person who doesn't throw away letters after reading them, but actually dares to keep them. Did Sian go to the beach that day and deliberately run into the sea for a show? I've been stuck in the middle of you guys this whole time, and it's really been hard on me. Sian also wondered why she still missed Jaeho so much even though she always complained to Yunmi about him not being able to do anything. Then Sian moved her mouth a little and listed out the details of the two of them one by one. It turned out that Sian wasn't unaware of the two of them. She just couldn't believe it and didn't want to believe it. The most obvious example was the handkerchief. The two of them had obviously told different stories. Since she was young, Sian had shared clothes, bags, and all kinds of food with Yunmi. When she saw Yunmi keep crying, Sian told her to stop acting. That was only 2 slaps. It wasn't painful enough to make her cry like that. Then Sian got up again and slapped Jaeho. She told Jaeho to keep Yunmi in check and stop acting like a hypocrite here. This will only make her feel even more disgusted. Jaeho, who had received a slap in the face, seemed a little embarrassed. He wanted to find a quiet place to discuss a solution. Sian said that she would go to a lawyer friend's place. She told him not to divorce. First, he must file a lawsuit against Yunmi, create a gap between you, and don't miss any compensation for mental and physical damage. As for divorce and other things, just let go when you feel satisfied. As for Yunmi, the defendant, she has to write a statement, and no matter what, she will not win the lawsuit, and in the end, this humiliating file will follow her for the rest of her life. As for Jaeho, the same applies. This shameful criminal record will also follow him for life. But what Sian is more curious about is what Yunmi will write in this statement. After all, she usually teaches children how to write essays. The statement must be very well written. After losing the lawsuit, she still has to pay for her own mental compensation. She should have saved all the money she spent on running errands for her over the years. Then Sian turned her head and wanted to target Jaeho. Unexpectedly, Yunmi suddenly interrupted and said that this was all her problem and had nothing to do with Jaeho. Sian didn't want to pay any attention and stood up and slapped Jaeho again. Jaeho finally couldn't stand it anymore and stood up and said that they would discuss everything outside. Sian called Jaeho's family over. When his mother saw the wound on Jaeho's face, she was concerned and asked. Sian said very domineeringly that she had hit him. She also briefly explained what had happened. Hearing this, the father punched Jaeho. Facing this scene, Sian calmly said that she had decided to return the goods. She didn't care what they would do and just left. After returning home, Jaeho knelt on the ground and begged Sian for forgiveness. He said that he had only made one mistake and there was no need for this. Sian turned her head and issued a soul interrogation. If apologizing works, what's the point of having the police? Despite Jaeho's incessant apologies, Sian still had no choice but to forgive him. Sian said, I'll choose a place with a lot of people to expose you. You're just afraid that I'll suddenly give in and compromise. You want to have strangers by your side to support you. After all, you're facing 2 people who have lived together almost every day since they were young. Then Sian took out a document she had drafted and told Jaeho to sign it and meet her at the courthouse. Jaeho slowly stood up as if to show his magnanimity as a man. He told Sian to just do what she wanted. He would cooperate with all her demands. But no matter what, at least think about the children. He felt that Sian was still angry at the moment, and that she might calm down after a few days. He also asked Sian to rationally consider the matter. But what Jaeho did not expect was that Sian was more rational than ever. If you do not agree to a settlement, then I will directly appeal to the court, because I have enough evidence in my hands. But Jaeho still wanted to persuade Sian after all. Sian's business had just been hit hard, and she was now penniless. No savings. If he leaves, he will become a homeless child. At this, Jaeho wanted to hug Sian. Unexpectedly, he was pushed to the ground. Sian shouted at Jaeho, Do you know how many quick fix pills you have taken since you found out about this? Then she poured the pills out of her bag and ignored what Jaeho was saying. Sian dragged her luggage and walked out, leaving Jaeho stunned in place. Later, Jaeho returned home and knelt down to apologize to his family for embarrassing them at the coffee shop. Unexpectedly, his father picked up a baseball bat and tried to beat him to a pulp. Fortunately, his uncle stopped him. His father yelled at Jaeho, No one can forgive this kind of thing. He raised his hand to slap him, but instead slapped his uncle's neck. I don't know if his father's slap was intentional or unintentional. The next day, after the 2 of them came out of the courthouse, they took their children out for the last meal for 3 people. Sian tells Lucy that she is going to study abroad and Lucy says that she will be good and wait for her mother to come back. But I will cry when I miss my mother. Hearing her daughter say such things, Sian couldn't hold back and ran out, wiping her tears alone in the bathroom. But the way she clenched her hands seemed to indicate that she would not let go. That night, Yunmi found Sian and apologized to her tearfully. Sian, however, asked Yunmi if she had done something wrong since she was young. Yunmi cried and shook her head, saying no. However, Sian did not want to say anything more to her at this time, leaving behind the words that she had taken care of everything, and you can go after your own happiness. She turned and left. Afterwards, Yunmi went to Jaeho's house again. As soon as Jaeho's father saw her, he felt disgusted and went back to his room. His sister also scolded Yunmi for being a shameless woman. Even if Jaeho agrees, the whole family will not agree, and she is fired from her job as a tutor. She is not allowed to come here to help in the future. At this time, the vicious mother-in-law ran out and questioned Yunmi, the shameless woman, what she was doing here. She also put all the blame on Yunmi. There is no way Jaeho would do such a thing. Tell Yunmi to get out now. Yunmi had not yet left the house when the two of them started talking behind her back. Afterwards, when she went out, she even ran into Sian. Sian looked at Yunmi as if they were enemies. It turned out that Sian had sold her company in order to sever all ties with this side. Afterwards, she sold her car at a low price to repay the money she borrowed from the evil mother-in-law. This family only now remembered Sian's kindness and tried hard to persuade her not to leave. However, Sian had already gone to court with Jaeho and had completely lost confidence in this family. She got up without the slightest trace of nostalgia and left, in order to persuade Sian to change her mind. Her father-in-law offered her a generous deal. He would not only give Sian his company, but also transfer all his assets to her name. However, Sian directly stated that there was no room for negotiation on this matter. Afterwards, she picked up her mother from the hospital and rented a semi-basement with the little money left. Her mother looked at her daughter with a heart full of sorrow as she carried her suitcase. Sian had suffered the same hardship since she was young and wanted to go over there and beat up the family. Unexpectedly, Sian hugged her mother and comforted her, saying that she had already taught them a lesson. If she had to trouble her mother with such a trivial matter, it would show that she was useless. Although Sian tried her best to show that she was fine, her mother knew her daughter's mind. She told Sian to definitely get back what was originally hers. She could not just let someone else have it, even if it meant destroying it. She could not let someone else have it. Sian said there was no need to waste time on such trivial matters. She was more precious than they were. On the other side, her sister found Jaeho and said that Sian had just come and returned her mother's money. She had clearly failed in business. So where did she get so much money? Jaeho hurried to Sian's company after hearing this, but found the door locked and the place deserted. Jaeho found the landlord and learned that Sian had already cancelled the lease and hadn't been seen for several days. Then he went to find Jae-hyuk, but still had no news of Sian. At this time, Sian had already returned home and was cleaning up all her belongings. Unexpectedly, she was seen leaving by Yunmi, who had arrived. Yunmi, who had no worries, barged in directly, looking at the room with only Jaeho's clothes left. She didn't know whether to be happy or sad. She carefully arranged the few remaining clothes. Yunmi received a message from a friend when she finished cleaning the room and was about to leave. The friend asked if something had happened to Sian. Yunmi happened to meet Jaeho downstairs when he returned, but he pretended not to know Yunmi. On the other side, Sian had just left a client's house. Unexpectedly, it suddenly started raining heavily. Having sold her car, she could only put the scarf on her head. As soon as she returned to the office, she habitually asked Yunmi to hand her a towel. However, when she came to her senses, she realized that this was no longer the same office, and the two were no longer best friends. Sian's empty heart felt as if it had instantly fallen into a bottomless abyss. Helpless, she knelt on the ground and cried. Sian's mother grabbed Yunmi by the hair and scolded her for being a shameless woman. Even though Yunmi kept begging for forgiveness, she showed no sign of forgiving her, and this scene happened to be seen by the child. Lucy angrily scolded her mother-in-law for bullying Aunt Yunmi. She said that she also told her mother-in-law to hurry up and leave the house. In the evening, Yunmi began to sell her misery, saying that Jaeho had been frantically searching for Sian regardless of the weather. She could only clean the empty and lonely room here, and she had decided to quit before Sian's outburst. She also said that this was not an excuse for herself. It was just a statement of fact. On the day it happened, I was constantly humiliated and beaten. I was only able to hold on because Jaeho was by my side, because I believed that you would help me carry everything. Yunmi finally understood. Men can fall in love with anyone, but they don't necessarily want to marry them. In the end, she told Jaeho that he could just dump all the blame on her. After Yunmi said all this, she ignored Jaeho's reaction and turned around and left. However, the next day, Jaeho was still looking for Sian everywhere. He finally spotted Sian in front of the bank. He followed her all the way to the alley. Unexpectedly, he received a call from the kindergarten saying that Lucy had wet her pants at school. Now Jaeho was determined to find Sian, so he quickly called Yunmi for help, but he just lost track of Sian for a few seconds. By the time Jaeho arrived home, Yunmi had already put Lucy to sleep. Sian, meanwhile, was in a small, run-down shop, personally making jewelry for customers. This disheveled appearance had completely lost the temperament of a chaebol heiress. After a day, Her fingernails were already covered in dust. The nail art she had done earlier was now a burden. She took out her makeup remover and kept wiping, but was told by the boss that the shop was about to close. But the customers want this tomorrow. Cian could only smile and say she would be done in a moment. She hoped the boss could be a little more flexible. After Cian finished her work, she went to the bathroom and used soap and a toothbrush to scrub the annoying nail polish off. The next day, Jae-ho arrived early at the alley from the previous day, hoping to see Cian. Luckily, it wasn't long before Cian walked by. He followed her all the way to where she worked, and then stood by the side of the road all day. When Cian finished work, Jae-ho followed behind her and learned that she was now living in a semi-basement. Seeing the current situation of the mother and daughter, Jae-ho couldn't help but have tears in his eyes. The next day, Jae-ho went to Cian with a sum of money and asked her to change the semi-basement first. Unexpectedly, Cian tore the check into shreds. She even threatened to call the police and directly kick Jae-ho out. However, as soon as Jae-ho left the door, he bumped into Jae-hyuk carrying a bunch of things. He greeted Jae-ho and then went straight upstairs. Looking at Jae-hyuk's departing back, Jae-ho seemed to have thought of something in his heart. But Cian also didn't expect Jae-hyuk to be able to find this place. But his attitude was obviously much better than towards Jae-ho. Jae-hyuk knew that Cian and Jae-ho had ended and began to show his own care and love. Now Cian has no mind to consider these things and directly said something back to Jae-hyuk. Jae-ho returned home and instantly looked much older. When he saw Yoonmi taking care of Lucy eating, he just said hello and went back to his room. Yoonmi cooked a bowl of steaming hot instant noodles and took it in. Unexpectedly, Jae-ho was hiding under the covers shivering. Yoonmi felt Jae-ho's forehead and found that he had a high fever. Just then, Jae-ho's sister called to ask if he had found out where Cian had gone. Jae-ho then told her everything that had happened over the past 2 days. After hearing this, Yoonmi wanted to go and see Cian, but Jae-ho refused, saying that Cian didn't want to see anyone. He also told Yoonmi not to come back to take care of Lucy. Hearing this, Yoonmi understood what Jae-ho meant. She stood in the kitchen for a long time, hesitated, then poured the noodles into the garbage can and left the place. But a few days later, Yoonmi asked Jae-ho out again. If only I had done what you said that night. We are in a lot of trouble right now, but I still hope you can hang in there. That day, Jae-ho's father found Yoonmi. He wanted to tell Yoonmi's parents about the scandal. Just then, Yoonmi's mother happened to pass by. Jae-ho's father wanted to say hello to the nanny. Yoonmi quickly stopped him, saying that he had the wrong person. Jae-ho's father didn't pursue the matter. He was anxious to find Yoonmi's parents to solve the problem. Unexpectedly, Yoonmi told another big lie. She said that her parents had passed away. This was to stop the old man. The old man immediately looked suspicious. But then he thought, no one would joke about their parents. He could only helplessly warn Yoonmi not to cross the line. Yoonmi stood there, dumbfounded, not knowing what she was thinking. But no secret can be hidden. How will she face it when it comes out? At this time, Jae-ho was being scolded by his mother-in-law, who grabbed his clothes. Jae-ho's mother feels that it is because Jae-ho let loose all night that the situation has come to this. Then she dragged Jae-ho home. Why should their daughter bear the consequences when the whole family has done wrong? It's been so long and they haven't even received an apology. Jae-ho's mother seems to have heard nothing and is looking at her son's messy clothes. The two old women then started arguing. Fortunately, Jae-ho's father shouted at the right time to stop them. Otherwise, judging from their temperaments, they could have argued all day. Then the father apologized for Jae-ho's behavior. But Cian's mother was still not grateful and told everyone about what she had seen last time. This time, Jae-ho's father could not hold back anymore. Jae-ho took a step back in fear when he saw his father get angry. His mother quickly explained that it was not like that. Luckily, Jae-ho's sister came forward in time and said that Yoonmi occasionally went over to take care of Lucy. This time, Jae-ho's mother took advantage of the situation and said that all the problems were caused by Cian. How dare you come here and make a scene? But she also knew that she couldn't let things get any worse, so she turned around and called Yoonmi to scold her. Yoonmi didn't dare say much on the other end of the line. However, this vicious mother-in-law could never say anything nice. Before hanging up, she told Yoonmi not to harbor any illusions. She said that her family had never looked down on her. What they didn't know was that these insults no longer hurt Yoonmi. They only strengthened her resolve to leave. That day, her daughter told Jae-ho that her mother-in-law had beaten Yoonmi up, so Jae-ho immediately asked Yoonmi out to say sorry. But Yoonmi felt that this was nothing. It was just that her thoughts these days were even stronger. Hearing this, Jae-ho held out his right hand, but just then he received a call from the hospital saying that there was a party to attend at the weekend and asking him to bring Cian along. Although Yoonmi said it was fine, she really hoped that Cian would not agree. That night Yoonmi found Jae-ho with a few bags, saying that they were snacks and toys for the child. Unexpectedly, Jae-ho took out his wallet and put several 100,000 won on the table. This action made Yoonmi feel humiliated. The next day, she imagined that she was an upper-class person and started dressing like Cian. Yoonmi felt that this would allow her to live the same life as Cian. However, This was all just self-deception on Yoonmi's part. In the evening, she still went to take care of Lucy like a servant. After tidying up the house, she sat in the dining room and poured herself a glass of wine. However, the fantasy in her head just wouldn't go away. Yoonmi was so distracted that she also drank quite a lot. She didn't know how long it took before Jaeho returned home. Seeing the other person dressed up and the effect of alcohol, Yoonmi began to speak without restraint. She felt that Jaeho was the same as Seon, and as long as he gave her some money, he could use her like a slave. Jaeho heard this and hurriedly sat down. He knew that Yoonmi had spent a lot of savings on this place during this period of time, and the purpose of his payment was partly to reimburse and partly to thank. Yoonmi said, I know you're not going to take Seon to court. She also knows that Jaeho has always denied their relationship. After that incident, she regretted it every day. Although you said you were completely over it, you still took the initiative to contact Seon in order to attend the class reunion. Jaeho was surprised that this woman who understood him would say these things. Yoonmi felt that Jaeho never understood himself. Moreover, he had always tortured the people around him by wavering. Hearing this, Jaeho got up and poured himself a glass of wine. He also admitted that he was indecisive. However, Yoonmi was not going to let Jaeho off the hook so easily. Instead, she pressed him to make a decision. Jaeho struggled for a while before slamming a ring on the table to show his attitude. It was also the first time he had revealed his heart. He said that even before she made her feelings clear, his heart had been struggling non-stop. He wondered what life with a woman like her would be like. Yoonmi said, So you've just been daydreaming. Hearing this, Jaeho thought she was drunk and acting crazy. However, Yoonmi said, I'm more sober than ever. It's because she can't stop thinking about him that she wants to numb herself with alcohol. The things that have happened over this period of time have also made her lose face. But I can care about nothing as long as you can be firm with me. But I still can't see into your heart. It feels like I'm suffocating. Then Yoonmi went to Seon's office. But Seon didn't want to see her and was about to leave. Yoonmi said she had something to say. Seon could smell the strong smell of alcohol on her. Yoonmi said she drank to build up her courage. Then she asked Seon to pour her a glass of water. Yoonmi took the glass and said directly, This time, you pour the water for me for the first time. Seon didn't want to say anything more and took her to the cafe where they had met before. After the two sat down, Yoonmi went straight to the point and said that last time she was here, she suffered Seon's humiliation, but she felt that Seon was also partly to blame. Yoonmi no longer hid her feelings. She said that Seon had never looked down on her from the beginning. Before, when I was at the customer's house, I was ridiculed for being clumsy, and you didn't say a word to defend me. We are not friends, but employees. Now that I think about it, it seems that when we were out, you never introduced me to anyone. Seon said that if she explained things like that when meeting clients, it might cause problems. She thought that the two of them could understand each other, but Yoonmi didn't think so. She felt that in Seon's heart, she was just a slave who could be used as she pleased as long as she paid. It was precisely because of this despising attitude that the men she introduced herself to were either very old or divorced with children, and the men you introduced to other friends were either chaebols or various upper-class people. After hearing Seon's explanation, Yoonmi didn't pay any attention to it, but continued. At that time, when the engagement ring was delivered to me, I was told that it was specially designed for me, but in the end, it was returned by another customer. Seon almost broke down. At that time, she had clearly given the pair of engagement rings and 10 million won. Why did you remember the engagement ring and ignore the money? Yoonmi felt that this money was originally her due, and it was a compensation for being her lackey for more than 30 years. Seon was speechless upon hearing this. These things were clearly things Yoonmi was willing to do herself. And I always paid you the highest salary for running errands. Seon couldn't understand why she had tried so hard to help her, only to be treated like a vicious white-eyed wolf in return. Yoonmi also admitted at this time that she had indeed followed her because she could get benefits, but Seon just thought that she was short of money, so she could order her around so recklessly. It was as if she was a personal nanny, and she even took her on business trips, which she euphemistically called trips. Not only does she have to carry all the luggage herself, she also has to provide wake-up calls every morning, and massage her when she returns to the hotel after a day out. She even has to kneel at her feet to help her take off her boots, and even help prepare her sanitary napkins. Yoonmi feels that even ancient slaves and maids could not have treated her like this, although she always says thank you. It is not hard to see from the look of contempt in her eyes that deep down you feel that you are only worthy of doing these things. If you want to know when I started coveting your things, it was from the moment you didn't treat me as a friend and made me kneel on the floor to change your shoes. Seon felt that Yoonmi had now gone mad and there was no way to continue communicating. She felt that no matter how much Yoonmi was aggrieved, she should not have done such a thing. Although Yoonmi directly admitted it, she said that she was not the one who took the initiative and did it on purpose. After Seon heard this, She directly poured a glass of water on her. She felt that if Sian really considered her a best friend, she would at least have asked her before doing that. Sian couldn't stand listening to her complain anymore. Yunmi also spoke her mind while Sian was there. It turned out that when she was little and went to Sian's house to play, she started envying everything Sian had. Not only did she have a mother who loved her, but also many dolls and pretty clothes. That's why she sprayed her perfume and wore her pajamas. And it wasn't that she particularly liked that thing, it was just that Sian had it. So she wanted it. Yunmi just wanted to be like him and live the life she had. Sian then realized how twisted Yunmi's heart really was. Living the same life as her, going so far as to do such a thing, was simply incomprehensible. However, Sian was about to leave when Yunmi grabbed her by the hand. No matter how you torture me in the future, since things have come to this. She also implored Sian to grant her one thing. Just now, when Jaeho had just come downstairs, he passed Sian's mother. Sian's mother had just entered the door and saw the messy house, and her mind could not help but speculate. She nervously opened the bedroom door. Fortunately, it was neat inside and did not have the scene she had imagined. When Jaeho returned, she was even making breakfast, and her purpose for running here to curry favor was to try to ease the relationship between Jaeho and Sian, saying that the two of them had just had a minor conflict and it wasn't that bad, and that they should just go out for dinner one day and make up, and that her mother-in-law would also try to persuade Sian. If she had said anything too harsh before, she just needed to be a little patient, and that she would let Sian come over and apologize in person. After that, Sian's mother went to Jaeho's father's house again. She apologized humbly for her previous outburst. It was all Sian's fault, and Jaeho had nothing to do with it. But the old lady kept rolling her eyes and looked at the gift she had sent. However, Sian's mother was not angry about this. She pleaded with them to be magnanimous and not to hold it against their daughter. She also gave the two of them her word. As long as they were willing to forgive Sian for her mistakes, she was confident that she could restore everything to the way it was. The old man saw her sincere attitude and agreed. Soon, Sian's sister called. After hearing the news, Sian's attitude remained firm. She said she had no knowledge of the matter and would never reconcile. That night, Jaeho asked Yunmi out. He said he had thought about everything and we shouldn't give up and go on together. Hearing this, Yunmi couldn't hold back any longer. After 30 years, the relationship finally had a resolution. The two embraced tightly. Jaeho also asked her to go home with him at the weekend, so he could make his position clear to his family. The next day Yunmi received the news that she had passed the teacher training exam. She was so excited that she ran all the way home to tell her family the good news. After hearing the news, the family all broke out into genuine smiles. This was perhaps the only thing the family had had to celebrate in decades. It was soon the weekend. Yunmi nervously followed Jaeho back to the family home, holding flowers in her hands. Although everyone hated this woman, but she was still allowed to stay out of Jaeho's respect. As soon as Jaeho sat down, he said he had good news to share with them. Unexpectedly, his mother questioned whether Yunmi was pregnant. Jaeho quickly explained that Yunmi had obtained a teaching certificate. Upon hearing this, everyone looked back at Yunmi in shock, because it is quite difficult to pass the teacher's exam there. Yunmi felt a little uncomfortable under their hot stares. They immediately told Yunmi to sit down and think about the future. The old man, who had been difficult for the two of them before, also became gentle with Yunmi. Her father told Jaeho to be careful with this matter and especially to take care of the child's emotions. Her sister, who had spoken harshly to Yunmi before, even agreed with her feet in the air. It felt like this family perfectly illustrated what it meant to be fawning and sycophantic. Afterwards, Yunmi said that her heart had just about jumped out of her chest with the tension. When I first entered the house, I thought they were going to beat me up. Jaeho smiled and said she could trust her completely. Then Jaeho asked Yunmi when she could visit her house. When she heard this, Yunmi's expression changed. She hadn't thought of how to explain it. Then Jaeho took Yunmi to a high-end clothing store. Yunmi's appearance in formal attire made Jaeho fall in love at first sight and give her a thumbs up. Seeing Yunmi's shy appearance, he couldn't help but tease her. To thank Jaeho for the clothes, Yunmi took him to a restaurant. Unexpectedly, Sian and her mother were also having dinner there. What's more, the woman who had previously complained to Sian also came here. Pretending to be angry, she asked Sian what was going on. Why were those two getting engaged? She even told Yunmi about getting accepted into the teacher training program, and kept defending Sian with righteous indignation, without noticing the awkward and unnatural expression on her face. Seeing that the woman was getting more and more outrageous, Sian simply took her mother and ran out. However, after Sian left, the woman's expression looked as if she had got her revenge. Sian and her mother had just walked out when they ran into Yunmi again. Sian's mother, who had almost exploded with anger just now, just exploded. When Jaeho got in the car after parking it and came in, he found everyone pointing at Yunmi. Some even came forward and accused Yunmi of being a bad woman. Jaeho heard what they were saying and understood what was going on. He defended Yunmi and left the place directly. After coming out, Yoonmi helplessly crouched on the ground and cried. Jae-ho stood by the side, not knowing how to comfort her. His raised hand hesitated for a long time, but in the end he did not put it on Yoonmi. That day, Seon was shopping with her mother when she noticed Yoonmi's family shopping as well. Recalling the taxi driver and the uncle from the scrapyard, Seon followed Yoonmi's mother home. Knowing Yoonmi's secret, she went straight to the uncle. Seon confronted the uncle about whether the maid was Yoonmi's mother, and whether the accountant was Yoonmi's sister. Seon made it clear that she already knew the truth and was just trying to confirm it. Seeing her uncle's silence, Seon knew that her judgment had not been wrong. However, when she returned to the office, the chaebol lady who had previously asked her to order a ring came over. Seeing her disheveled appearance, the lady directly cancelled the cooperation. Seon understood that this was her only lifeline at the moment, and she did not want to let her go. Unexpectedly, she was shaken off by the chaebol lady. Seon then deeply realized that in times of trouble, nothing is of any use. Unexpectedly, when she returned home, she saw a scene that made her sick. She forced herself to hold back her anger and dragged her mother back. Seon was about to pay tribute to her father when she suddenly received a call from the police. The police said they had caught the person who stole her work. Seon hurried over and questioned the woman why she had done this to her. Unexpectedly, the woman asked Yoonmi how she was doing recently. Those design drawings were all given to me by Yoonmi. Seeing that Seon was reluctant to believe her, the woman took out the design drawings Yoonmi had given her. Seon opened it and saw that it was the draft she had thrown away before. After that, the woman even took out the text messages Yoonmi had sent her. Seon then realized that this was not a coincidence, but something Yoonmi had planned a long time ago. Her eyes instantly turned cold. After returning home, Seon swore on her father's grave that she would settle things with those two shameless people in her own way. Early the next morning, she found Jae-ho and apologized for what had happened. I was also overwhelmed by anger at the time, but as time goes by, I have also reflected on myself a lot. You can't be blamed entirely for this. I also need to take some of the responsibility. And the worst decision I made was always letting Yoonmi run errands with me. Seon also admitted that she had indeed always looked down on Yoonmi, and that was why she trusted her so much. She hoped that she and Jae-ho could go back to the way they were. Jae-ho was stunned by these heartfelt words. After Seon finished speaking, she didn't linger. However, the moment she turned her back, the apologetic expression on her face suddenly hardened. Then she asked Yoonmi out again, saying she wanted to go on a trip with her to remember the past. After getting in the car, the atmosphere was extremely awkward. Seon was already too quiet and turned on the radio. Then she asked Yoonmi to help her get the coffee in the back. Unexpectedly, Yoonmi opened her bag and found a knife. Seon said the knife was for peeling apples, but Yoonmi knew she didn't peel the skin off apples. After taking out the thermos, she handed Seon a half cup of coffee. Trembling, unexpectedly, Seon said she wasn't drinking it now. It was specially prepared for her. Yoonmi thought about what the radio had just broadcast and became more and more afraid. She said she would drink it later. Seon also noticed Yoonmi's hesitation and aggressively asked her if she didn't trust her. Yoonmi said with her mouth that she could never not trust her, but her trembling hands betrayed her. Seeing her like this, Seon grabbed the cup and gulped it down. After arriving at the restaurant, Seon even told her to go wash her hands before eating. While washing her hands, Yoonmi suddenly realized something was wrong. She rushed out and sure enough, she saw Seon pour something into her food. Yoonmi sat down and nervously asked Seon what it was. Seon's guilty look made Yoonmi even more certain that it must be poison or something. Unexpectedly, Seon said it was just collagen powder. After she said that, she took some and poured it into her own food. Due to what she had heard on the news, Yoonmi always felt that Seon's invitation to travel this time was not as simple as it seemed. So while Seon was in the bathroom, she secretly hid the pocket knife in her bag, but she didn't expect to fall on the ground while going to the bathroom. Seon heard her scream and rushed over. After Seon left, Yoonmi looked around. First, she checked to see if there was a hidden camera anywhere. Then she opened everything and sniffed it. Afterwards, the two of them talked about the past, reminiscing about their high school days. Seon suddenly turned pale and asked Yoonmi why she did those things. She has spent half of her life with her. Even now, every morning when she first opens her eyes, she thinks about her. She feels that losing her best friend is the most heartbreaking thing in her life. It's even more difficult than breaking up with Jae-ho. Yoonmi also said that she is the same as her. Every day, she thinks about whether she will message or call, if there is anything she can do to help. Although she lost her temper last time due to the alcohol, these things were not her intention. Yoonmi also apologized for what she had done during this period of time. And when I was with you these past 2 days, I was always on edge. If I were beaten or scolded, I would feel better even if I were killed. I would have no complaints. Hearing this, Seon directly opened her bag and found that the knife was gone. Yoonmi stuttered and said that the knife might have fallen on the car. Seon didn't care and told her to hurry up and put on her jacket so they could go watch the sunrise together. However, when Yoonmi picked up her jacket, she thought about the news that day. Seon said at this time, Are you afraid that I'll push you into the sea? When Yunmi heard this, she was shocked and cold sweat broke out all over her. Unexpectedly, Sian suddenly laughed and told Yunmi not to be so scared. You obviously know how to swim, and you wouldn't use such an obvious method. After arriving at the beach, they watched the sunrise together and left the same pair of earrings, a symbol of their friendship, behind. This signaled the end of their relationship. After returning home, Sian went straight to the law firm. A summons from the court was also sent to Yunmi's home. However, it was signed for by Yunmi's mother. Later, Sian pretended to be returning from studying abroad and asked Jae-ho to take their daughter to the airport. Meanwhile, Yunmi was cleaning the house and had put on new bed sheets. When she was about to go out, she happened to hear the sound of someone preparing to open the door outside, so she had to hide in the bedroom. When Sian came in, she saw the tools on the side and curiously asked Jae-ho if he had cleaned in the morning. But Sian knew that Jae-ho would never do such a thing, but she didn't immediately expose it and walked into the bedroom. She found the newly replaced bed sheets and jokingly asked Jae-ho if he had prepared them for her. Yunmi just got home and received a call from the police station. She rushed to the police station and looked at Sian innocently, but Sian simply chose to ignore her. The police asked Yunmi if she had stolen Sian's design drawings and given them to a woman named Joan. Yunmi hurriedly explained that her actions were not theft. I only took the sketch she had thrown in the trash. The police then asked how much she had received as a bribe. Yunmi said she had not received any money but had been threatened by the woman. But the police had already checked her account and told her to be honest and tell the truth. Yunmi could only helplessly say that she had received 500,000 won from the other party 3 years ago. But a few months ago the police car knew that Yunmi had given this design drawing to Joan. Yunmi explained that Joan had been threatening her for 3 years, so she just took an abandoned sketch to make do. And Joan had been holding the 500,000 won as blackmail. If I didn't help her, she would tell Sian about it. Hearing this, the police believed that Yunmi had done it on purpose and could be considered an accomplice. Yunmi quickly retorted, "It's not what you think. Ask Joan to come here and confront her." Then she turned her head to convince Sian. The police immediately asked if they were friends. Sian said, "Yunmi has always been my assistant and knows my personality very well. She can also enter my office at any time. She also knows the passwords for the computer and the safe. She had been caught peeking at the designs on my computer." Sian begged the police to make sure this woman was brought to justice, because she had not only ruined my business, but also my reputation in the entire jewelry industry. After leaving the police station, Yunmi caught up with Sian and explained that the 500,000 won was to help pay for her mother's surgery. "I did it because I was in such a hurry to raise the money. At that time, I thought you weren't going to take the draft seriously, so I picked it up and gave it to that woman." Unexpectedly, Sian ignored her and told her to save her words for the judge. After returning home, Yunmi's mother gave her the document she received that day. Yunmi opened it and saw that it was indeed the lawsuit Sian had mentioned to her. She took the document and went to Sian's office. Sian then asked if she was feeling good. After all, she had never received such a gift before. "I thought you were a woman who was not afraid of anything. I never thought you would worry about such a trivial matter." Yunmi asked Sian in a panic, "When you went on a trip before, didn't you say that you would forget about the past together?" Sian said that I was talking about severing our 20-year friendship. Then she listed Yunmi's crimes one by one, from the moment they threw away the necklace together. "I was the plaintiff and you were the defendant." The compensation amount listed was 35 million won, because Sian knew that Yunmi was not at all able to repay it. Yunmi knelt before her, begging for forgiveness, but Sian was unmoved. Jae-ho, who had arrived, witnessed the scene. A few days earlier, Yunmi's sister had been preparing to search for information on the computer. As soon as she turned it on, she found Yunmi's lawsuit. When Yunmi returned, she hurriedly asked what was going on. Yunmi could no longer hold back her tears. With streaming eyes, she asked her sister what she should do. After comforting her, her sister went to find Jae-ho and asked if he knew that Sian had sued Yunmi in court, and that Sian had even reported Yunmi to the police for stealing ideas. Her sister said that he was the only one who could save Yunmi now. Afterwards, Jae-ho found Yunmi's ex-boyfriend Taehyun and wanted to find out from Taehyun what kind of person Yunmi really was. However, Taehyun showed no gratitude towards the woman who had helped him for 4 years. He said that Yunmi was a ruthless woman who told lies. He also complained about the broken front door of Yunmi's house. There was barely any room to walk in the small apartment with a floor area of just a few dozen square feet, and 5 people were living there. The hopes of the whole family were pinned on Yunmi. They hoped that she would quickly marry a good man to support the family's expenses. On the other side, Yunmi's younger sister called Yunmi and said that she had consulted with a colleague who used to work in a law firm. The advice was not to go to court, and that private mediation would be the best option. That night, Yunmi first went to the river and prayed to the gods that if she could just become a teacher, she didn't care if she lost everything else. Then she went to Sian's office and said that she had already given the police all the information and recordings of her conversations with Joan. the truth would come out in a few days. I came tonight to discuss private mediation. I will spend my whole life repaying the debt I owe you. Seeing Yunmi still not giving up, Sian said that she was suing not for the money but for the judgment, so that this stain would follow Yunmi for the rest of her life. This way she could have the satisfaction of revenge. Even if it took more than 10 years to go to court, she would win in the end anyway, and Yunmi would have to pay for all the legal fees. Hearing this, Yunmi went straight down on her knees and told Sian to just kill her, rather than going to court. Yunmi began to confess to Sian that it was all her fault, and that she was willing to give up everything to win Sian's forgiveness. For so many years, all I've thought about is how to maintain and upgrade. If I go to prison, my entire family will fall apart. She also made a promise to Sian. If you can forgive me this time, I will disappear forever from your sight and quietly spend the rest of my life. However, Sian, who had heard all this, didn't feel anything at all. She turned her head directly and didn't want to hear a single word of Yunmi's nonsense. However, neither of them noticed that Jaeho had also arrived when Yunmi knelt down and took in the whole scene. The next day, he found Sian and personally cooked a table of food. Sian thought that Jaeho had suddenly woken up. However, she didn't expect that Jaeho actually wanted Sian to withdraw the lawsuit against Yunmi, because the video from the coffee shop had gone viral, and Yunmi had worked for her for decades. No one else could have done what Yunmi had done, and she herself had often said that she could do without a husband but not without Yunmi. If you still had even the slightest shred of humanity, you wouldn't have done this matter so decisively. Sian, who heard this, got up in anger and left. Unexpectedly, she was stopped by Jaeho. Yunmi had no choice but to accept the 500,000 won from Joan 3 years ago to raise the money for her mother's surgery. If she wasn't forced by her poor family circumstances, she definitely would not have done it. Jaeho hoped that Sian could put herself in her shoes. Early the next morning, Sian barged into her father-in-law's house and told them all to follow her to witness something. The group soon arrived at Yunmi's house. As soon as they entered, they discovered that Yunmi's mother was the family's former nanny, and the father was their hired chauffeur. After learning that the two were husband and wife, the old man turned to Sian and asked why they had brought them here. Unexpectedly, Yunmi walked out of the bathroom at this time, and the old man finally realized Yunmi was their child. After returning home, they called Jaeho over and told him to stay away from that woman who told lies. Unexpectedly, after learning the whole story, Jaeho still defended Yunmi and felt sorry for Yunmi for having to hide her identity from her family. Jaeho also made it clear to his father that he would stand by Yunmi's side. After saying this, he left directly. Angry, he found Sian and asked her what she could possibly gain by doing this. He couldn't understand how Sian could become so cruel overnight. Sian immediately retorted that what about the harm Yunmi had caused him? And Jaeho didn't see Yunmi at all. She was the kind of person who valued her own life above everything else. That night, Jaeho arrived at Yunmi's house according to the navigation. When he opened the door, he thought of what Taehan had said about the door being broken, so he opened the door carefully. After entering the house, Jaeho directly revealed his identity. However, Yunmi seemed a bit angry about Jaeho's arrival and asked him to go out and talk to her alone. Yunmi dragged Jaeho all the way to the river and asked him to leave this matter alone. She had already lost face in front of everyone and decided to completely sever the relationship between the two of them. She also apologized for previously swaying Jaeho. These words left Jaeho confused. Didn't you say that no matter what difficulties there were, you would walk through them together? He embraced Yunmi in his arms. As a man, I will never give up on you like this. Yunmi, however, broke free from him and told him to put away his pathetic sympathy. Although these words were very hurtful, Jaeho didn't care. He also asked Yunmi to follow him far away. He had a doctor's license and could live a very good life wherever he went. However, Yunmi directly rejected Jaeho's entreaties and begged him to let her go. That night, Sian's mother went to the school where Yunmi was about to work and hung a banner. When she got home, she bragged to Sian that she would definitely help her get her revenge, and that she would make that shameless woman Yunmi unable to become a teacher. Everything was developing in Sian's favor, but she couldn't sleep at all, thinking about the miserable sight of Yunmi's family today, and the cruel words Jaeho said to her when he found her today, recalling how Yunmi had spent the night looking for her lost jewelry, and when she was tired, she would give her shoulder a massage. She always bought her mother's favorite snacks, and when she was sad, Yunmi was the only one who would keep her company. And the other day, Yunmi said something when she was drunk. The past events echoed in her mind like a flowing river. Sian finally couldn't sit still anymore and found Jaeho. At this time, Yunmi had changed into her professional attire and was preparing to stand on the podium for the first time in her life. Sian heard Jaeho's reply and rushed to the school. She tore down the banner her mother had put up. However, her mother also arrived at this time to stop Sian from doing this. While the two were arguing, Yunmi also arrived and quickly hid around the corner. However, Sian was actually praising her mother. For more than 20 years, Yunmi has always helped herself with trivial matters. She cannot just ruin her life like this. Although she also hates Yunmi very much, She cannot ruin her lifelong dream in this way. Seon also switched to Yoonmi's perspective at this time and thought about the problem. If Yoonmi had also been born into a wealthy family like herself and had a mother who loved her, she would not have become what she is now. Although she has used every means possible to take revenge over this period of time, she still feels bad inside. I once thought that I would feel better after I had taken my revenge, but now my heart is in turmoil. Yoonmi, who was hiding in the corner and heard this, was also in tears. In the morning, Yoonmi stood on the podium as she wished and taught her first lesson in life. However, after class, Yoonmi went to the principal's office and put her resignation letter on the table. Then she found Seon and said she wanted her to be the first to see her wearing professional attire to work for the first time. Then the two of them sat in a cafe again. Yoonmi said that everything that had happened was because of her twisted desires and she had lost her best friend. She didn't know how to write the response, but she would accept the punishment as Seon wished. Early yesterday morning, she tidied herself up properly, for her first and last time on the podium. I also arrived early at the school gate. Unexpectedly, I saw you arguing with your mother. Before Yoonmi could continue, Seon noticed what she referred to as her last time on the podium. She questioned what exactly she meant. Yoonmi said very frankly that she had already submitted her resignation. Seon heard this answer and scolded her, asking if she was crazy. That was a teaching position that you had worked hard for most of your life to get, and she spent a whole day withdrawing the lawsuit. She got up and was about to drag Yoonmi to school. Yoonmi, however, shook her head and said that it was fine. She simply did not have the confidence or courage to face the students. She was also very puzzled as to why Seon had suddenly decided to let her off the hook. Seon said that she already knew everything. I had already cut ties with Jaeho before I found out about that incident, and I didn't tell anyone about what happened in Italy. That day was also the first time I went to Yoonmi's house. Although I stormed in angrily, I was incredibly choked up when I saw what the house looked like. Seon could never imagine how she had survived under such conditions. The two finally reached a reconciliation after pouring out their hearts to each other. Afterwards, Yoonmi packed her bags and went to an unfamiliar place. She only left a letter for her family saying not to worry. 1 year later, Yoonmi became a teacher in a remote area. She also told her sister where she was. Upon receiving the news, her sister quickly rushed over. Her sister also said that she had prepared a special gift for her. When Yoonmi ran to the pier, she saw Jaeho there as a volunteer, carrying things. Okay, that's the end of today's story. Although there were many plot twists, the overall ending was a happy one. I wonder what you think of this ending.